Start. And we're live. Welcome.
Right.
I usually don't do hangouts, so I'm an amateur. It's fine.
Oh, we have
we have Alex Ruebenstahl, if I pronounce the name correctly.
Yep.
Ruebenstahl. Is it what type of a last name is that? It's
German.
German. Ah, close cousin. I'm in the Netherlands right now.
Ah. All right. I guess close.
Yeah.
Yeah, close.
Related. At least the language is related.
Oh yeah, I don't speak almost any German.
Your parents are not German. They are related.
My dad was his parents came, but he was born here.
All right. So your parents basically spoke the entire lives English, basically.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
And so, what do you want to talk about? Do you want to go over Nephi's claims again, or do you want to move on?
Oh, there's so much, so many bad claims.
I remember one thing about his claims on Rhodesites with the blowhole, and I think he's talking about Pachycetus.
Yeah, I was not sure which he was trying to refer to, because he was for a while trying to say that they were Pachycetus. They were trying to show it with a blowhole and legs, but it didn't have those, which is a weird thing to claim because it does have legs, but it nares too, but it's not really much of a blowhole, but it's a united nasal bone on the top. I think he was getting two things confused.
No, I think he cited the claim made by the creationist Carl Werner. I think do you know him, Carl Werner?
Carl Werner? No, let me.
CARL and WERNER. Carl Werner. He's a physician.
Oh, okay.
And he claims that Gingrich, the guy who discovered Pachycetus, falsely claimed that Pachycetus had a blowhole. But although Gingrich did not make the claim himself, Gingrich confused that claim by the artist who rendered Pachycetus like an old rendering.
Okay.
Let me pull it up. Like Pachycetus was announced popularly on this magazine right here, and this is how it was rendered by the artist. Of course, Pachycetus doesn't look like that. The artist took it from they've discovered a creature with features of whale, so it basically put all kinds of whale-like traits on it.
Right. So that looks a little more like Ambulocetus.
Yes, but it was about Pachycetus. This article.
Okay.
This magazine. Right. It's not a peer-reviewed article. It's a magazine. So the artist made the mistake. Right. And Gingrich never suggested that Pachycetus was at a blowhole. So that's the falsehoods in Nephi's claim, that Gingrich never made the claim that Pachycetus had a blowhole. But Pachycetus is a very terrestrial, but still has whale features. So it's still a transitional fossil. Of course. Yes. I can pull up perhaps a better figure about Pachycetus. Let me see here. Can you perhaps add something to it, or do you think we have?
I'm trying to figure out what original material. So, because I know the Pachycetus specimen isn't complete. I'm just curious what we have. I can't seem to find it. Yeah, so
basically looked more like this, I think.
yeah,
Yes.
and that's actually kind of cool because there was, I think in the 60s and 70s and earlier, there was kind of this idea of whales evolving from a group of land mammals, but they were called
Condylarths, I think.
I'm sorry.
Condylarths
Um,
or mesonychids.
Mesonychids. There we
Yes,
go. That
yes.
was yeah. And I know there's still some like there are some weird aspects of mesonychids that are suggestive of some kind of relationship to whales, but like it's not just that these are a cool link to whales, but there are traits in this group and uniting it with whales and other artiodactyls that another group. I don't know if you're familiar with the entelodonts.
Entelodons. These are the hell pigs, right? Yes.
Hellpigs. Yeah, hellpigs and some things like
Yes.
Androsarchus.
Like the wolves with sheep's clothing described. I think
Yeah.
yes.
So for a while, no, entelodonts were kind of
Yeah.
grouped with pigs, and recently, kind of this defining of a basal kind of cetaceous. I'm not sure exactly.
Cetacea, yes.
Cetaceomorph, right? That includes kind of these stem whales. Now includes a lot of these hellpigs and Androsarchus, and it's kind of given this interesting look from like massive terrestrial artiodactyls to aquatic artiodactyls.
Yeah.
And it's cool how it's kind of pulled all of these originally kind of problematic and weird taxa together and made sense out of it.
These taxons like mesonychids are very paraphyletic and perhaps even polyphyletic because they all include, I think, pretty much any ungulate that is difficult to place. So they probably also include relatives of horses, even though horses are not close relatives of, like how it's called. The ungulates, the artiodactyls, yes, the even-toed ungulates.
Yeah, it's a pretty old term.
Yeah.
Mesonychid. And it has some issues, but I think there's like, if you really get into it, there's like a Mesonychia, which is a monophyletic group, but it's pretty specific. And then there have just kind of been these other taxa that they've been throwing together with them.
Perhaps I can get a cladogram of mesonychids with artiodactyls. So here you have it. I think it's this term. Yes.
Mesonychids,
I think it's Androsarchus from the BBC Walking with Beasts.
Walking with
Yeah.
That's a great series.
Yeah. So it's very weird. Most ungulates we have today are herbivores, but we did have once ungulates with carnivores. Yes. I think the only known ungulate that eats meat occasionally is the hippo.
Today, yeah.
Yes, and of course whales, but whales are not often not considered ungulates. They technically are monophyletically, of course.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So I can maybe find a phylogenetic tree. This is from Wikipedia. Perhaps it's a bit wrong, outdated. I think. It's a bit blurry. It's also blurry. This is a bit clear.
That's a little better.
A bit clearer, yes. So, this one includes mesonychids within Cetaceomorpha. This one.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a paraphyletic group.
Yeah.
At the base of Cetaceomorpha. Okay, that's cool.
But it's still included within the total group of. Oh no! Wait, no. This one is outdated because it says Cetaceomorpha is outside artiodactyls. Yeah, this is an outdated. This is outdated.
Wait, what's this node?
Right. Which one?
Node 2 or is it 3?
I think that they are not labeled.
Base of the tree.
This one.
No, next one out.
This?
Farther out, more general, to the left.
Oh, this.
Like there's one, the next one up.
This one.
Yeah, this should be Artiodactyla.
Yeah, but
what's this?
This whole thing should be included in there, at least here, with hippos.
Yeah, hippo should be closer.
Yes, this whole thing should be taken up in this.
Right, this is probably a little old.
Yeah. Very interesting animals. Of course, creationists cannot accept this because you have hoofed animals that are carnivores, and that also shows that carnivores, like of course cats and dogs, are also related to ungulates.
Right.
Yeah.
It throws a little bit of messes with the model a bit, as they say.
Also, I wonder why these carnivores would have evolved ungulates of hooves.
Well, right. I mean, I don't think they had the. I think the hooves are very much a running adaptation.
Oh yeah.
Or right, like so, it wouldn't make sense for ambush predators to develop like a hoof. There's also a bit of. I can't remember where I heard this. I think there's a little bit of thought that a lot of these mesonychids were scavengers or opportunists. But I don't do a lot of stuff with mammals, so I could be out of date information-wise.
Yeah.
I'm looking at
perhaps well evolution. I can perhaps look at some kilograms of well evolution. Yeah.
There's a group that often gets left out. Actually, that now we're talking about whale evolution. There's a group that often gets left out of discussions on whale evolution, and they're called. Jesus, what are they called? It's not like Ambulocetus. It's not. It's an actual. It's like an entire subfamily within it, and they're really weird.
Are they whales within the clade?
They're not whales. They're more like
extinct relatives.
They look
extinct relatives of whales.
Yeah, they're amphibious. They look a lot like Ambulocetus. I think they're Remington Satish. Let me try that. Remington Satidae. They're this very curious early group of aquatic mammals closely related to whales that often don't get talked about by creationists because they're very numerous and they are better represented. Try Googling it. I didn't know about them until very recently.
I haven't done them either. I heard of Bacillosaurus that are like a dead end of whales. Right. Yes, but I have not heard of the group you mentioned. Can you spell it?
Sure. I'll put it in the group chat.
Yes, and I will put up something to show.
That's how it's spelled.
Yes. Is this the one?
Yeah, it's those top two images at least. And there are a few different species in the family. So yeah, they're these very odd looking early whales.
And they look like the seal equivalent of whales. Or at least otter, at least sea otter like, because they have all four legs still.
Yeah, it's kind of like it's an interesting kind of look at, like, once whales start getting into the water, it's not just Ambulocetus to Rhodocetus. There's kind of this cool little diversification you get once whales start to get around. I don't know exactly where these guys fall. Like, just glancing at them, I want to say they're somewhere in between Rhodocetus and Ambulocetus, but I'm not sure. There we go.
Maybe outdated.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe outdated, but it helps to illustrate the relationships. So yeah, of course, yeah.
It looks like it.
Like this. Of course, there are perhaps this branch of this branch goes a bit on further.
Yeah. Right. What's Procetidae? What does that include? Is that like
Myocetus? I think it's included in Protocetidae.
Okay.
Yeah.
Protoceptor.
And wow, there are a lot of genera and subfamilies in. So it's not just like of course if you look up well evolution like this and you only
Right, people
you
just
only see like this, only this. Of course, it's not just these. There are a whole lot of each step. So,
yeah. There are a good number of individual organs, and that's something that often gets lost in a lot of these kind of debates. Is that it's not just like one or two species; it's like entire families of these things.
Yeah. Perhaps
I'm curious.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
I'm just curious how much material there is for some of these things.
I'm trying to look up a time tree, perhaps, where you see a lot of families of whales correlated with the geologic time scale. Let's see here.
Okay.
Time tree. Yeah, I can spell it, of course. Let's see here. It is difficult to, of course, depict every single whale fossil in a single tree. Perhaps no, it's still. Most of these are, of course, very simplified diagrams.
Right, just kind of for general.
If you would include every single whale fossil, it would look like this, like a big mess of many different animals.
Right.
Yeah.
So Protocetus, what's your Durodon?
Yeah.
So Durodon and Protocetus are actually pretty similar looking, just superficially at least.
Yeah.
Cetus. But yeah, so kind of like the takeaway here is that there's a lot of kind of almost exploration of forms.
Yeah.
Early on, like it's again something that often gets confused by the creationists. That it's like it's not one to one to one. We have cool diversifications. Oh, this is one I wasn't familiar with. Georgicetus is kind of like a weird in between. It looks like it's on its way to Rhodocetus.
Georgicetus.
Georgia.
It's found in Georgia, I think, or not?
Yeah.
Yeah. I've heard that it was one of the first whales that are not found in Pakistan or close to Pakistan.
Right.
Where they evolved, the earliest whales evolved in Pakistan and in that area. And so these animals were already capable of crossing oceans, even like this.
I wonder. So this is. How old is this one?
Georgicetus.
Yeah, I want to see what the world map is like at the time.
Let's see here. It's about Middle Eocene, according to Wikipedia.
Okay, so Eocene world map.
It's very striking because these still had all four legs, and they still could make and they still could make it to America from Pakistan, at least.
Huh. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. I mean, that's substantial. It's not shallow water. Georgicetus.
And at the time there were very big sharks. I don't think how is it called again? Megalodon? Not yet. No, not yet at least.
Not around yet, but there were sizable sharks.
Yeah. They would be very, very tough travels for these guys to go there.
Right.
Yeah.
A lot of water, a lot of shallow seas. If they could, I mean, I can see where in North America they live right now.
Yeah. Yeah. But they are also found in like Egypt, where there was an ocean, like a shallow ocean.
Yeah,
yes.
Nice. Right across the top of Africa.
Yeah.
Was
it because of higher sea levels or because the plate tectonics didn't uplift it yet?
It was the Eocene, so there was a climate maximum, and there were basically no ice caps, so much higher sea levels. Yeah. The continents were more or less where they would be today. I mean, South America still was its own kind of island, but everything was kind of drifting closer together.
Yeah.
There's a good, what is it called? There's a really good series of like maps that do like different time periods. I'm trying to find the series names.
The maps of, do you mean the positions of the plates of the continent?
Yeah, so
I remembered something about a program where you can look up online to see the whole world in different time periods, and I can look it up for. Give me a minute.
Sure, no problem.
I can perhaps talk in the meantime. Sorry for
Sorry, I was just glancing at something. Yeah, and I was now that I'm thinking about it, we kind of figured out Nephilim's owl thing with second Google search, which I'm so baffled that he couldn't do himself. It might be worth it just to kind of poke around and see if we could try to figure out any. Do you remember what other birds he listed?
I think Jade mentioned Ajo Avis or something along the line. I don't know. Perhaps I'm pronouncing it wrong. Oh, he said that there were albatross-like birds back then, but I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what species he's referring to. Maybe it's another owl or another beaver. It is not really a beaver.
Okay, so what I did when I was curious about the owl was all I did was I Googled Cretaceous owl, and then I got a link to this paper, and they quickly pointed out, oh, yeah, no, we thought this was an owl. So now I'm curious, maybe if we just put in the Cretaceous albatross, we might get something. No, I'm getting links for Anantronithian birds, but here, let me try something else. Albatross. Yeah, real fast. Albatrosses belong to what group of birds? So what I have on Wikipedia, which again, grain of salt, but is usually pretty good with these things, is albatrosses are from the Oligocene to the recent, so till now. So that's like 38 million years ago till about now. So let's go a little more general Procelariforms. Procelariforms, which are, I think, albatross, large ocean-going birds, are Eocene
aren't
to present.
Aren't albatross closely related to penguins? Or am I?
I'm not sure.
No, no.
Later bird diversity really isn't one of my things. I can check.
No,
I'm kind of picking through. There are three major diversification events for birds in the Cenozoic, and I think you're right. I think penguins and albatrosses are pretty close. Yeah, one of the graduate students who helped me learn stuff does a lot of stuff on water birds. He's probably, hope he doesn't see this. Forget everything. Okay, yeah. So I have Ostrodiptornithes, but they're from the Paleocene, again, not from the Cretaceous. They include penguins as the most basal group, and their relatives, as well. No, not puffins. But again, this group does not. It's 62 million years old, which is Paleocene and pretty old, but it does not go back to the Cretaceous. All right, maybe this is. I think I might have found something. So we have Acornithus from the late Cretaceous, 70 million years ago. So yeah, something else that should be pointed out to him at some point.
Yeah.
Is that even when there's like the beginnings of modern birds, like Vegavis and things like this?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no problem. They're almost all exclusively from like the last like 72 million, the Maastrichtian, so 72 million years to 66, the very, very end of the Cretaceous, right? We're not getting these animals, these beginnings of the modern bird families in the early Cretaceous, like he kind of made seem. I think Gaviforms, okay, I'm trying to figure out which one of these groups is the one that's pulling it back to the Cretaceous. So it's not penguins and it's not petrels and albatross. I think the penguin record is again in the Paleogene. It does not go back to the Cretaceous. Yeah, 62. But maybe it's one of these other groups. Storks, no, they only go back 30 million years. Siliforms, Falco.
I don't think there were many modern birds during the Cretaceous.
No, it doesn't look like it at all. I'm just trying to figure out which one of these groups might have an origin, maybe at the very end of the Cretaceous. Solidae don't.
I've heard about Hesperornis and the Ionids. They were birds, or at least considered birds, but they are not within the crown group of birds that are alive today.
Right, they're not in aves. Because I'm just trying to figure out what he could have possibly been referring to. Let's see, Pelecanthiforms. Pelecanthiforms apparently go back to the latest Cretaceous, so 66 million years ago. But there's some. No, I'm trying to find the sources for some of these dates. I think these are. Oh, you know what I think these are? I think these are a lot of molecular clock dates.
Oh yeah.
Okay. Oh no, I got some taxa. Here, let's check these out. Loncodites is a questionable. All right, so it's not very clear.
Can you screen share? Okay, not.
Here, I can give you the.
Oh, I will screen share then. Loncodites.
Loncodites. Yeah. So that's a potential Cretaceous form. Torotics.
I think perhaps maybe not, but I heard that there was a very, very large bird that looked like an albatross, but it's now extinct.
I'm not sure. There's
one of the largest birds ever to flown, I think, but I don't remember how it was called.
There are some incredibly large extinct ocean-going birds from the Eocene. They actually kind of have fake false teeth.
Yeah.
But yeah, some of them got incredibly large.
Maybe that was he was referring to. Maybe, I don't know.
Well, it does look like Neornithis. Well, and this isn't actually a surprise. We kind of had a general idea, but so birds, aves, so like crown birds do originate in the latest Cretaceous.
Yes, and
million years ago.
Yeah,
but there were like
at least the peonate and the neonate diverged from each other before the KT extinction event.
Yes.
And perhaps some of them diverged prior to it, but we are not sure. I think that's a general consensus, I think.
It seems that there might be differentiation between Galloanceriforms and Neoaves right before the KT boundary. But again, this is all like 70 to 66. It's not all of the age of the dinosaurs. And what's kind of more interesting about it is it looks like the groups that are showing up are these very basal marine radiations. And the material that they're known by, I'm just kind of checking through. So for that second one I gave you, Turritix, it's known from like a humerus, a single bone. So I would take that with a grain of salt. Single carrot, you know, it's never great to just confidently say what something is off of a single element. I mean, it's not impossible. But yeah, there's
difficult.
a lot of.
You can perhaps place it in a very large taxon, but specifically, it's difficult. Often you need a very specific element. For example, if you have a tooth of a mammal, it's very distinct. You can perhaps tell it, oh, it's definitely a marsupial from your molar, or maybe a primate. But primates are very distinct molars.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right. Yeah, that makes sense. In mammal teeth, there have been some cool studies done where people will do a tree only with mammal teeth, and then compare it to a tree they got with like any other morphological or molecular data, and it's not 100%, but it's very close, which is kind of backs up the idea that mammal teeth are a pretty decent proxy for. Okay, and another potential early early bird is uncertainties of fossil Phallocordae. Phallocordae, Mr. Jane. Yeah, so there are some again very late Cretaceous kind of cormorant looking groups, but again their early record is very unclear. Like, you know, it's old, incomplete material, and it's not very certain. But yeah, I'm only finding it for cormorants. I don't even were cormorants a group he even mentioned?
Sorry?
Was cormorants a group he mentioned by name?
I don't think so. I think he said like beavers and owls and ducks. He also said ducks and an albatross. And I'm looking for the very large albatross-like bird with teeth, but I don't know how it's named.
Where is it? I don't remember how to spell its name, but I know that it's kind of related to albatrosses.
I've seen this picture, but I can't find the name. Where is the damn name of it?
God damn it. There's one of these. There's a museum in Maryland nearby that has one of these on display. It's a pretty cool, and I can't remember its name.
For people, remember, I'm just looking for the name. I'm not citing Daily Mail for anything.
Yeah.
I'm not. Where is the name? It also describes as an albatross, but it probably is not an albatross.
Like the albatross.
Yeah. Right. Oh, yeah, it's a pelacornid or cornidid.
Pelagnorth. Yeah. Okay. So that's the group.
Perhaps that was Nephi was referring to, maybe.
Yeah, but they're not from the Mesozoic.
Oh, all right. This is the display, I think you were talking about, or not? Like.
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is the exact one.
Yeah. I think it's maybe the largest bird we know of today, or is it not? Oh, I don't know.
I'm not sure. I think it's up there. Another contender is Argentavis, which is this massive condor-like bird from the Miocene of Argentina.
Of course, large is flying, but there are of course very large flightless birds that we know of, like the
right, like dino.
What's called the moa from New Zealand. Yeah.
And there are some big Madagascan forms too.
It would be very rare to, as the very first humans to get there, to see these giant birds. It would be very surreal.
Must have been a surprise.
It would be very, like, what the fuck is that?
Right, you get off a boat after God knows how long, and they're just big, scary looking birds.
And I thought, no, we are not going to preserve them, these very cool animals. We're just going to eat every one of them. Extinction.
Yeah, that's unfortunate.
Yeah, exactly. I wish they were still here.
They're cool birds. Yeah. Oh well. Yeah, they're definitely candidates for once we start to figure out how to resurrect recently extinct species, like they got to be easier than mammoths.
Yeah. But do we have DNA from the moa?
I think we have a foot.
Oh yeah, I remember that. I think that was a bit sensationalized as a dinosaur foot that was found. But of course, it is a dinosaur, but not a dinosaur, not a dinosaur in the sense that the common public would believe it.
Right.
But yeah,
enormous.
We could take the DNA from that and engineer an ostrich egg. But I don't know how closely related the ostriches are to moas. Perhaps
they're both they're in the same major group of crown birds, paleognaths.
Yeah.
Let's find out. So paleognath phylogeny. Let's see what Deinonychus is most closely related to. Moas are most closely related to tinamous. That's a weird group.
Yeah.
I think they're the only ones that can fly, right?
Tinamous?
Yeah, I think they're the only paleognaths that fly.
Yes, and they're very, very primitive paleognaths, I think.
Yeah, it might make more sense to use a rhea or an ostrich because I think that might be tricky.
But they are not very closely related. I think, at least according to this.
No, yeah. Damn, here's my moa.
Yeah, you definitely need a large egg to grow a moa, I think.
Right. I mean,
or perhaps if it's possible, you can grow it without an egg. Just in a sack, maybe, or something like that. Yeah.
People have been doing that now. I think they just recently hatched like the first egg from like raised totally in that kind of environment.
Yeah.
There's still hope. That'd be so cool.
Yeah. But perhaps the albatross, we cannot go anywhere with this. Perhaps we can look up the ducks that he is claiming.
Yeah. So the ducks got a little bit of all of the groups he kind of threw out there, the duck is the most right and also somehow very wrong. So there's a Cretaceous Anseriform, so generally duck, called Vigavis.
Yeah, of course. Anseriforms, they include not only ducks but also geese and and swans. But the modern species that we are familiar with were not there, at least.
Right. So Vigavis is a Vigavid. It's its own It's its own It's its own group. It's its own family. It's not a modern duck by any measure of the word. Where am I? So it's from 68 million years ago. Mesozoic.
According to Wikipedia, anseriforms date back to 71 million years ago.
Yeah, that would make sense. That's about the Maastrichtian. So, we might have so down to Gallo-Anseriform. Wikipedia is not a perfect resource, but it kind of gives you a good ballpark.
Yeah.
And
I think also anseriforms are one of the most basal neornids. I think also.
They are
alongside chickens and galliforms.
Yeah, so ducks and chickens form Gallo-Anseriforms, which is this group that's right outside Neoaves, which are like all the modern crown birds that are not
like this group.
Chickens or ducks. So yeah, they're very much a basal group. It would make sense to see them
this group, right, or not? This Gallo-Anseriform,
yeah.
Perhaps a cladogram will be helpful. Let's see here. Here. Whoa. Somebody was busy at Wikipedia. That seems. Look at this. Okay, we have neonates, and it splits right into two groups, like Neoaves. So there's a very big group, Neoaves, and here's the Gallo-Anseriform, like chickens and relatives, and anseriforms.
Right.
These are very primitive group by neornith standards.
Yes.
Yes. But of course, the species that we would have found in the Cretaceous, they are not found today at all.
No, yeah, Vegavis is not a modern duck by any measure.
No.
I don't know if we have any. Let's see.
Perhaps you can look up extinct. How is it called? The
Galloancera forms. I'm trying to see if there may be any extinct.
Can you perhaps name one extinct anthroform from the Cretaceous?
For which group?
Anthroforms.
Oh, so answer.
Cretaceous.
That would be Vegavis.
Can you put it up in the side chat, in the group chat?
Sure.
I can show it to the audience that are not there. I'm not very popular, it seems.
It's all right. Probably late for some people too.
Vegavis. It sounds like a vegetable.
Let's see.
I've also seen like an extinct duck that was very large, a very big duck.
Like, is it flightless?
I don't know. I have. It's a very long time ago. I've seen like a news article about an extinct duck species, and that was very big.
Okay. Well, what was found recently is Are you familiar with Gastornis?
Yes, it was. Gastornis is like a terror bird, but not really a terror bird.
Yeah. So Gastornis is a large potentially predatory flightless bird, but it is in the group that ducks are in. Yes. It's not related to the other terror birds.
No. It got featured on the BBC Walking with Beasts also, I think.
Yes, it did.
Yeah, in the very first episode.
Right, it chases a little elliptic titium around.
Yeah,
I have that series somewhere.
It's a very good series.
Oh yeah, Walking with Dinosaurs is still.
But I also have seen that they made a mistake with the predatory behavior of Gastornis. It probably was a vegetarian, and perhaps an omnivore feeding also on tiny lizards and like things.
It does seem more likely, but the later terror birds do seem more predatory, but they're a totally different group of animals.
Yeah, the terror birds, the actual terror birds are more closely related to, I think, one animal, or one bird. I don't know how it's called. Like it has very long legs.
A secretary bird.
Exactly. So, yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I think they're some of the survivors of that lineage. They're very
weird. They don't hunt using their. They can fly, but they almost never fly.
Run. They have these great feathers around their head.
Yeah, it's very good. This is Vegavis. It kind of looks like a duck, but not really.
Yes.
But let's see here. How's it called again? Secretary bird. Secretary bird. Like
great long legs.
Yeah.
Red faces, and they chase snakes, I think, right?
Yes, it stomps on snakes to eat them. Yes.
It's fantastic.
But it can clearly fly, but it almost never does. It's very weird.
It remembers its ancestry.
Yeah.
Of big running flightless birds.
Well, did it used to be always flightless, or?
No, that was probably wrong. It's probably sister to the flightless birds that died out.
I don't think it regained its flight. I think it always was flight, but now it's beginning to more use legs
towards a more terrestrial lifestyle.
Yeah, of course, flight is very expensive and energy-wise. Yes, so if you don't have to fly, you shouldn't fly, actually, at least.
Yeah, exactly. That was kind of one of the mysteries with tinamous, was that, is this the ancestral condition, or did these birds regain flight? And it seems that it was just they maintained the ancestral condition of being able to fly, which makes sense because it's difficult to re-evolve flight.
It's also very interesting that the paleonate almost exclusively went towards flightlessness.
Yeah, and I wonder if that's maybe just preservation bias or like what we have left. But it is odd that almost all of them.
I think it's because these groups accidentally went onto islands, and islands.
Islands?
Yes, islands. That's a very weird.
Yeah, that's an interesting. That might be it.
Yeah, and islands do a very weird thing with birds. They almost everything of almost all time when birds end up to islands where there is no predators, or practically no predators. They always go to flightlessness.
Right.
Eventually.
Yeah, that because like all over gone, and it's probably also a distribution thing because they're Gondwana in distribution. Yeah. They're limited to Madagascar, Africa, South America, and Australia and New Zealand, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So they're a weird group. Morphology outside of like they have a paleognathic palate, and they've retained some kind of primitive characters in their skeleton, at least in their wings. Ostriches still have claws.
Yeah. one claw on an arm that has no muscles at all.
Yep. And they have their sternums are really cool because most birds have a keeled sternum.
Like ostrich or I think emu at one arm. Emu skeleton. Let's see here.
They have a little claw, maybe. I'm not sure.
It's the you cannot see it here. I think. Perhaps like here, this. It's very faint. You cannot see it. Almost not see it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think Aaron. Do you know Aaron Noir?
Yeah. Yes, I do.
He made a picture of an emu with this. See here, where he made a picture of his emu with his arm. Like,
oh, cool.
Let's see, where is it? Maybe emu arm. It has to be somewhere. Here, this one.
Oh, cool. Yeah, you can see it.
Yeah.
Claw, the wrist, the elbow.
And one claw, a tiny claw on an arm. It has virtually no muscles. It has no way to move these arms.
They're very, very vestigial.
Yeah, very, very vestigial. Now, how would you explain?
Because at least.
How would you explain that, creationist?
No idea.
No idea.
And like at least ostriches still have a little muscle on because they do stuff with those. But it doesn't look like
I think they use it.
Emus do it all.
Yeah, I think they use it to either for display or cool down to like in the heat when they flap their wings.
Right. Don't they also use it during like matings? Like they'll run at each other. It's very odd to watch. But yeah, it's because I don't think moas. I think moas and kiwis almost totally lose their arms.
Oh.
Right.
And kiwis are very weird. They are like birds turning into rats, basically. Yeah, and they also have a very weird reproductive. That's a kiwi bird.
They don't have any arms or legs.
Kiwi bird.
Yeah, right. They have one huge egg, right?
Yeah, one huge egg. I don't know why they would why they would evolve to have one huge egg. It seems like a deliberate
bid for extinction.
Deliberate going for extinction. Yes, they almost die basically because it presses against their internal organs so much.
It is. I honestly can't think of a reason why.
Yeah, the only reason why because they want to make their young develop so much that they are practically independent after they are born. I don't know.
Right, that makes sense. A bigger egg, you have a bigger yolk. Yeah. The young are going to be more developed when they're born.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
How long is the incubation time after the egg goes out? I don't know.
Oh, I'm not sure for kiwis.
No.
I imagine it's probably not too long because there's a lot of development that goes on just in formation of an egg that big once it's hatched.
Like a little platypus. After they lay their eggs, it practically immediately goes out.
Yes. Yeah. And Marsupials, what do marsupials do? They're kind of like an in-between.
Yeah, in between. They have no egg anymore. Practically the embryo crawls out of it and goes toward the nipple. It's also very weird.
Big old arms that are way more developed than their hind limbs.
That would be very freaky if we were marsupials.
Yes,
Imagine.
that would be very strange.
Yes.
Just see a small child climb up its mother with big old forearms, and that's it. And these little weird atrophied hind limbs. Yeah, it is kind of just curious to think that, you know, only crown mammals really have placental birth, or, you know, even a marsupial birth.
Yeah.
Because it's something that you always just kind of you're like, oh, of course mammals had live young, but, you know, you look back and you're like, oh, well, maybe there were eggs for a while.
Yeah, there used to be a time where egg-laying mammals was the norm.
Right. Yeah. And some weird, because if you think like placentas are weird. Yeah. It's like a very strange. I mean, it makes sense. It's an interesting solution to an evolutionary problem, but it is weird to implant your yolk in like your mother's vascularized uterine tissue.
And I've seen articles that identify like virus genes, the genes from viruses that inserted their DNA in us that help in the process of the embryo implanting itself in the uterus. Yes.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh, wow, that's pretty cool. So, like, is that just a? Is that a what's the word I'm looking for?
Horizontal gene transfer?
No, more just like kind of a process on how it works. Like, is that just a remnant DNA? Like remnant?
No, basically, like a virus. And you know ERVs, right?
Yes.
Yes, and I'm basically, you know, most of the time the ERV is disabled. It doesn't do anything, but in this, occasionally, it gets used for a different purpose.
Oh, okay.
Like, maybe it's maybe it's a re-adaptation. I don't know what term you're looking for.
Is that kind of? Can you think of any other examples where, you know, ERVs are actually active?
I think that's the only one I remember now. Maybe there are more examples of where ERVs are used. Yeah, it's a very interesting example of an horizontal gene transfer event that is useful for the
organism.
Especially in multicellular organisms. Yes, like us. Let me look it up. I can think of maybe placenta virus DNA. Perhaps I can look it up. I think here it's all like an article about it. Let's see here. Mammals made by viruses. Here, Science Direct with the viruses in the placenta. Of course, from 2012. Yeah, it's a very, very rich literature on it.
I'm gonna have to give that a read at some point. That is very interesting. Yeah. I was not familiar with that at all.
Yes, of course, creationists often pull this stuff to say, aha, ERVs are not remnants of virus infections. They are there for a function. So it's design after all. But of course,
you know, most animals don't have placental implantation.
Yeah. Most ERVs are just there. They don't do anything. They are disabled. They don't get transcribed. It's basically junk DNA. Of course, the term is not very often used in the literature. It's just a term that is often thrown around by creationists.
Yeah. No one really believes in junk DNA anymore, except for creationists that think we believe in junk DNA.
No.
It's just much easier to say non-coding.
Yeah. Of course, there is a lot of non-functional DNA in us. We can prove that. Maybe we can prove that. There is a lot of like lines and signs, like these DNA that make copies of themselves, and they don't do anything other than making copies of themselves in our genome. It's also very weird.
That is very weird.
They are active, but they don't do anything functional.
Besides copy.
Yeah, or maybe we, of course, we cannot tell. Maybe they do something functional, or at least some of them.
But we just don't know yet.
At the very moment now, we say, okay, most of them have no function whatsoever. They just make copy of themselves. Perhaps it's to facilitate evolution, maybe.
Perhaps you're right. Yeah, I mean, because even like exons have functionality in the fact that they're exons. Yes, right? They might be just spliced out, but there's that function within itself serves a purpose.
Yes, there are a mechanism of new gene evolution that is called exon shuffling, and that is allowed by the fact that we have introns. Like you have
similar to alternative splicing, or is that a kind of its own thing?
I think you have like multiple genes, and you have like a new gene created from borrowing exons from these genes. I can pull up I can pull up a figure that is in my textbook. Let's see here, exon shuffling, and it's an example of how new genetic information gets added to the. Here. This is a figure in my textbook. You have like a epitomic growth factor, like these exons, like the same exon repeated at all.
Right.
And you have like fibrinolactin gene and the plasminogen gene, and you have like these duplicated exons forming one new gene, and it's called the TPA gene.
Oh, so, and is it a coding gene?
Yes, I think so. Yes.
That is very strange. What does it do?
TPA gene. Let me look it up. TPA gene. Plasminogen tissue plasminogen activator. Oh, is it a TPA gene? I don't know.
Is that an immune system thing?
Let me see here. We can. I don't know. It's often boring to research during a hangout because it takes time. Yeah. Perhaps for something for later, if we can.
Let's make a note of it. Yeah.
Make a note. Of course, there are many examples of exon shuffling and gene duplication, and that disproves basically also another statement made by Nephi. Because how do you explain new genetic information? Like, of course, they don't define what they mean by information, but if this doesn't count, like a new gene, like
being made by exon shuffling, what does count?
What does count exactly? Of course, they say, but it's not new because you use old information, but that's not the point. You can use old information and make something new out of it with a new function. And that's
exactly.
And they won't never ever get that. Of course, for example, and let's see here. Our jaws are derived from gill arches.
Right.
Yes.
The first gill arch.
Yes, of course. Is that not new because our jaws are made of gill arches? Because it's not. It didn't poof out of nothing.
Exactly. Like there's an expectation that I think a lot of these creationists have that is like, a new structure is being produced out of thin air.
Yeah, exactly.
We're thinking, oh no, it's maybe a change in a regulatory region or a promoter is changing how a structure is expressed. Like, gill arches is a great example, and a Hux gene duplication event means more segments, at least developmentally, which means you can do more things with these parts of your body. Like if you had insect mouth parts are a great example.
Oh yeah, I've been looking that up recently. It's very interesting.
Yeah, so like you have just kind of changes in Hux gene regulation of what would be legs into essentially mouth parts, and I think Nephi even mentioned it, and he was kind of hand waving. It's like, oh, are you talking about putting legs in the face? I'm like, there's a reason that works. It's because of that section of the expression of the Hux gene. And there's another really cool, shit, I have to think back to one of my classes. Why flies have halteres and then wings, and it's expression of I think it's the UBA. Let me check the Hux gene region.
I think I've recently posted a lecture made by someone discussing arthropod evolution, and also including the how different appendages evolved into different mouth parts. Like it's it's very interesting because like the fangs of spiders, they aren't really fangs. They are more like pincers.
Oh yeah. So the fang part. So spiders belong to chelicerates.
Yes.
Which includes scorpions and so like they've all kind of modified this front section of segmented.
Yeah. First into claws, and then spiders basically modified those into like poison pincers. No, not really.
Yes.
Not really fangs. More like pincers.
So and then horseshoe crabs do their own thing with it. Eurypterids, sea scorpions turn them into big old claws or grasper. It is a cool way to kind of watch how you can change little things and get these massive morphological changes, which is something that again I don't think translates very well to creationists. Like one of my favorite examples when people ask, hey, where are these? Show me where you can get these big morphological changes from mutations. My favorite is in sticklebacks.
Sticklebacks. Oh yes.
Stickleback fish.
Yes.
So yeah, there's this region called the PIDX1 gene, and if you mutate the promoter, so it's not expressed, they won't develop pectoral spines, and essentially their pectoral spines are the equivalent of our pelvic spines.
Perfect.
And our pelvic spines their pelvic spines are the equivalent of our pelvic girdle. So them losing their leg, these spines is essentially like us losing our legs. And
of course it is losing something. It's not gaining. Right. It always goes like that.
But you can by correcting it. All it takes is I think it's a very simple polymorphism, and then bam, if you within generations time. So the pressure on it is a predatory thing for these fish that live in these environments, and then another change to this regulatory region, and you can get these spines back. And what's cool is that it has a left side selection bias. So when you start reducing the spines on the left side, the spines will be a little bit bigger than on the right side. And someone looked at manatees and they realized that the remnants of the left hip bone in the manatee is a little bigger than the right side. So it looks like PIDX1 is like a major conserved gene in like a pelvic girdle expression, which is, again, a really cool thing you could only do if you understood how evolution worked.
Yeah, it's very, very interesting. So basically, it's also very interesting why this has a bias towards one side. It's a bit asymmetrical.
Yeah, I'm not actually sure what the reason for it being an asymmetrical kind of thing is, but it does help us identify where it shows up.
Also, I'm just showing a lecture made by Greg at Edgecombe. I don't know how I pronounce it right, but it's a very interesting talk he does by explaining how different groups of arthropods are related, and how some of them, their appendages evolved into like mouth parts and fangs and some stuff like that.
Cool.
Yeah.
Who is it by?
It says right here by Greg at Edgecombe.
Edgecombe? I'm not. Yeah, I was just thinking maybe I had some idea. No idea who he is, but that's cool.
Yeah.
Is it posted in the fascinating lecture?
It's a very, very fascinating lecture. Yes.
Myriapods, chelicerates, right, and then crustaceans and insects. Yeah, arthropods are a interesting group because their fossil record's good too. So hard parts make for an interesting fossil record. So sometimes where we struggle with cnidarians.
Yeah, are they really good? Because I think by vertebrate standards, because vertebrates are more often fossilized because they have more harder parts than arthropods, or not?
Wait, which ones?
I don't think that the arthropods are very good fossilized very often, or are they?
As far as representation goes for the arthropod fossil record, it's pretty solid. I don't think it's as good as the echinoderm.
Yeah.
There was a 90s paper.
And compared to vertebrates?
All right. So generally speaking, species-wise and like distribution representation-wise, our invertebrates with hard shells are generally better, but our vertebrate fossil record at this point is at least as strong as our echinoderm record in representation of time and different environments. It's a hard comparison to draw, but our vertebrate, in most cases, our echinoderms, our arthropods.
I think maybe because arthropods are very common, they have a higher chance to get fossilized.
Exactly.
And that outweighs their lack of durability to get fossilized.
Right.
Yeah.
And you're probably it'll probably be easier to fossilize crustaceans than it is to fossilize millipedes.
Yeah. Of course, land arthropods are very difficult to fossilize because they are often exposed to air. In the ocean, they are more likely to get preserved by mudslides or in the ocean, something like that.
Right, or just an anoxic lake bed. Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, it's just generally easier to preserve anything in the water. But yeah, arthropod fossil record's not bad. We have some really excellent locations where you have these just massive Lagerstraten of insect fossils from like the Oligocene, some places from the Cretaceous, and you have just hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of species of different insects, which is pretty good for the fossil record.
It's also a good point to point out for those creationists who say that the Cambrian exposure with all those phyla appearing at the same time, like arthropods. But many groups of arthropods that we are familiar with today were not there. Like spiders, they were not there. Like insects, they were not there in the Cambrian.
Right. We get these stem members.
Yeah.
But nothing recognizable. Really, I mean, we have stem crustaceans, but they're not shrimps or lobsters.
They are really weird. I can look up like a picture of it. Like,
sure.
How are these called? I don't know how they are called. Like,
morellomorphs.
A glass pits? Oh, no, that's not. That's a.
Here, I can put some.
Here.
Morellomorphs are a good example. And some of these. The sister group to arthropods are lobopods.
Is this it? Morellomorphs?
Maybe I misspelled it.
That's not the group I was referring to, I think, perhaps.
So there's maybe this one? Anomalocaris?
Oh, yeah. I don't think the Anomalocaris were like crustacean or...
No, they were potentially lobopods, potentially stem arthropods.
Stem arthropods, yes. They are outside the crown group of arthropods.
Yeah, one of my favorites is Opabinia.
Yes, with a very long trunk snout of thing.
It's got 5 eyes.
Like a vacuum cleaner or something. Like I don't know. Yeah. He also like a thing like this, like of maybe not this, but there was also an Anomalocaris that was a filter feeder, like a whale or something like that.
Right, and it was actually very large, and it's kind of this interesting and kind of cool return to large filter feeding forms.
I was talking about I was talking about these.
Which one? I can't. It's
these things.
Okay, yeah. Leancoilia is a very strange. It's got all these like little rows of, and these really long feelers in the front. Yeah, there are a lot of bizarre.
They look like very superficially like lobsters, but they are not lobsters.
Right.
Yeah.
No, they're very, and then of course there are trilobites, which are very recognizable.
Yeah, exactly.
But again, nothing like anything alive today, despite being easy to recognize.
Also, I'm wondering, are trilobites closer to like things like horseshoe crabs or more like insects and crustaceans? It's also a very hard debate, I think, for trilobites.
Right, I'm not sure where they fall. I always thought they were a more basal group.
Yeah.
I think crustaceans and insects fall closely together.
Yes.
pancrustacea?
Yes,
No?
insects fall within the crustaceans because crustacea is now paraphyletic.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, yes. Like you have some maybe can I pull up again a phylogenetic tree, pancrustacea, and basically, a very good picture. It's not too complicated. Of course, if you look like this, nobody will get it, or perhaps.
Right.
Yeah.
So that looks like...
maybe it's still a good one because like you have let's see here.
Hexapoda.
Only except for myriapods, we have like the 3 groups of monophyletic crustaceans, like the Oligostrasa and the Vericrustacea and the Xenocarida. And they are increasingly more closer to hexapoda, and these include the insects, like the Xenocarida are the closest crustaceans to insects.
Okay, that's pretty cool. I wasn't even familiar with Oligostracata. Huh.
Yeah.
And then we have myriapod, and it looks like it has trilobites down at the end, or at the base.
Let's see here. They're not included. It's a phylogenetic tree. They don't have.
Oh, it's all molecular data.
Yes, I think so.
Oh, I see.
I always thought the trilobites were closer to like horseshoe crabs. Maybe it's a superficial thing. But well, with a very good picture of like the let me see a logo. I have like a picture of scorpions with of sea scorpions with trilobites and glass pits and something like that.
I don't know if it's still a valid clade, but there's
Eurypterids?
No. Eurypterids are still a group.
Oh.
Arachnata. I think chelicerates and trilobites used to be grouped together.
Yeah.
I don't know if they still are. And they had a clade called, and I don't remember what that clade was called. Do you remember what sea spiders are?
Yes.
Are they chelicerates too? I'm not.
I don't know. I've seen papers that includes in them, and I've also seen papers that they are the most basal of all arthropods. They are not closer to any other arthropod group currently alive today. I don't know. It's very.
That's pretty cool.
It's very debatable. That relationship. They appear to probably the like the mandibulata, like the myriapods and the crustaceans and the insects, and also the other group, the chelicerates, with the scorpion, spiders, and horseshoe crabs, and also the third group, the sea spiders. These 3 groups diverge very early on and also very quickly from each other. I think you have like a permanent. How it's called in the phylogeny, the polygamy relationships, I think.
A what?
A poly, no, not polygamy. Sorry, I think I got the terms confused.
Polytomy?
Yes, polytomy, exactly. Polytomy relationships.
Okay, well, a polytomy usually reflects a lack of resolution as opposed to a rat. So, I mean, if you don't have the data, a rapid diversification event will probably come out as a polytomy because it's very hard to distinguish.
Yes.
But yeah, so a polytomy is when you have 3 branches and there's no way to indicate which is more closely related to the other.
Exactly. And I think that's the case with like the mandibulata, chelicerates, and the sea spiders.
Right. At least until more data is found.
At least, yes.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I'm trying to look up it's a very good picture. I don't know. The Arnwas website was Loco Lobo. I don't know where.
And something else that I think is often kind of lost in discussions about the Cambrian explosion, outside the fact that we have pre-Cambrian fauna at this point, with the Ediacaran biota and stuff shit, what was it?
I found it. This is it.
This is
Like this going up. Do you see it?
okay. I see. Well, that's a cool figure.
Yeah. It's not saying that all these group are ancestors of one another. It's just showing a pattern. Like
Right.
perhaps maybe you do not know more about it. But do you know Spriginia?
I do know Spriginia,
Yes.
and I know that it's a potential Precambrian arthropod, but its relationship is unclear.
Yes,
at
exactly.
this point.
Exactly.
But it is a compelling, and it's not the only one. I think there's another weird thing from the Ediacaran fauna that's been a proposed early arthropod, but I can't remember what it was called.
I think it's called Pro Articulata.
The species or the group?
And the group, the Pro Articulata. I think that's where Spriginia is now placed in.
Placed?
Or maybe, let me see. Pro Articulata. So, okay, it has. This is weird segments that articulate with one another like this.
I'm getting
and this is where Spriginia is now. I think Spriginia is tentatively placed here. Let me see here.
Right. It must be very hard to resolve these early relationships.
I see. Yes, Spriginia is placed in this group. Yes, at least according to Wikipedia. Sorry for using Wikipedia very often. I know it's not a very. It gets the basics.
Yeah, Wikipedia is a good place to start.
Yeah.
But it should not be your end of an investigation.
Exactly. It's also very interesting to look up these Ediacaran animals. I
think there are a few different proposed phylums like that are unique to the group that have been made. I don't know how valid any of them are, but it is.
It's very difficult because they show so little distinct features. They can be
How they're preserved is also an issue. So like sometimes, a 2D press of a fossil will get most of the skeleton and it looks pretty nice, but it's very hard to identify some of the characters of the skeleton because it's a smashed, it's a 2D press, unless you can CT scan it, in which case it's great because then you can get a lot of data without having to do anything destructive.
But there are a few fossils that you can comfortably place, like Kimberella.
Oh yeah. There. It looks like there are early, mollusks.
Yes.
And some of the first.
At least a stem mollusk, not within the crown group, probably not.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think there are some early cnidarians, so like jellyfish and coral ancestors from the Precambrian too.
So this shows that even bilaterian animals were already diverse before the Cambrian. Yes.
Yeah. So the Cambrian explosion is much less of a big thing than it used to be.
Yeah.
Now it's kind of like the Cambrian slow explosion. There's got to be a better word for that.
I often use instead of explosion, I say Cambrian radiation.
Yeah, that's a much better word, and that's more accurate to the reality.
They really should stop saying explosion because it was not an explosion because it at least took at the very least 15 million years. The more conservative estimates, I think, about 20 to 40 million years long.
Yeah.
The radiation event, yes.
But it's very catchy.
Because not everything appeared right at the bottom of the Cambrian. Like you have like trilobites first, and then like the first vertebrates in another stage. There's
a very early Cambrian fauna, the small shelly fauna.
Yes.
Which is.
Let me see. How was it called again? I don't know the name of the fossil. Let's see here. Also another. Perhaps another mollusk-like thing that had
Claudinia?
Perhaps yes. I think Claudinia.
It's like a little stacked kind of tube thing.
Oh no, this thing.
Yes.
But I don't know. There's also a very good thing, but I was not referring to this. It looks like a chitin.
Like chitin?
It looks like a chitin, like this chitin.
Oh, like the shell.
Yeah, but it's not one shell. It was many shells on one thing. Many shells. I don't know how it's called.
I'm not sure.
Let me look it up.
Sure.
Small shelly fossils. That was probably one of the animals where these small shelly fossils came from. Do you? In the meantime, can you perhaps remember another claim made by Nephi, and perhaps maybe we can talk about it further?
What else did he say? We talked about the beaver.
Yeah.
We talked about some of his birds. He said so much, so many wrong things. He talked about the beavers. He talked about the birds. I'm not sure. I can't remember off the top of my head. I could tell you about ornitho. This I can't even say it.
Ornitho Scalida.
Scalida. There we go. I keep thinking there's another TH.
I found it.
Scalida.
I found it. Halkierit.
What's it called? A Halkierit.
Yes. Let me see. It looks like this. We think.
Okay.
There are two major shells and like a lot of little shells all over it. It perhaps was I think maybe a mollusk.
A mollusk?
Maybe, but
that's cool. I see the Wikipedia page has a Lophocozoa, which is kind of like mollusks. Brachiopods are in there. So are bryozoa. It's a pretty big group.
Exactly.
But it would make sense, to have the origin back there.
And it's also maybe proposed to be closely related to Ruebenstahl. There's also.
Oh, that cool, the shelly, spiny, weird one from the Cambrian. Yeah, it kind of does look like it, right?
Yeah, a bit, a tiny bit. Like a Ruebenstahl. See, not like this. It is definitely or not a mollusk, or I don't know.
Ruebenstahl was thought to be a mollusk at this point,
or at least a stem mollusk, perhaps.
Right. Yes, a stem mollusk.
Yeah, but it's very difficult to say. Oh, it falls within.
Definitely right.
Yeah, it's not
so different.
It's also a very also point to say to creation, because when we say a mollusk pit, or we should say it's a stem mollusk. It's very close to mollusk, but not closer to any mollusk, more to one mollusk than the other.
Right. Yeah, the distinction is important.
Yeah, the distinction. So extend.
They'll start saying, it's like, there were squids during the Cambrian.
Yeah, exactly. There's a distinction being made between crown groups and stem groups.
Exactly. Although there are some weird cephalopods that show up during the. Have you heard of Nectaris?
I don't know. Perhaps I've seen the figure, but like a cephalopod with only 2 tentacles.
Yeah, that one.
Yeah, exactly.
Weird looking thing.
Let's see. How do you spell it?
I think it's Nectar. Here, I'll put it.
Yes.
And that's just off the top of my head.
This is really fun. Even though it's like 3 a.m. right here, but now I'm still having fun. Really, I don't worry. I am free tomorrow. I can sleep as long as I can tomorrow. No, it's not. I don't think it's it.
Maybe early cephalopod.
Well, is it an actual cephalopod or another stem group of cephalopods? I think perhaps.
All right, so Cambrian cephalopods. This might be Nectocaris. I was missing some.
Nectocaris.
There we go.
There we go. What? It says this or this.
What the heck is this?
I don't know. Well, it's from Wired, not a popular magazine. Yeah, I don't know.
What does the fossil look like? Is that the fossil?
No, it's not the fossil. Fossil. Perhaps you can look at it. Here.
Okay, that looks a little squiddy.
Yeah. It's also very weird. It's also very weird because did they just add more and more legs, or
Yeah, maybe those were like divided.
Yeah.
Developmentally, like they became that they.
I've seen proposed diagrams for like or mollusk evolution. Let me see here, and it's very good illustrations. Let's see here, mollusk evolution. You can see like the foot of one becomes the tentacles of the cephalopods, like that. Let's see here, where is it? Or maybe I must put cephalopod. I perhaps. It's like this. You have like something, but before it you have like a snail like thing, and the foot of a snail is homologous to the tentacles of the cephalopod. Yes.
The muscular foot.
Yeah, the muscular foot. Yes. It's also very yeah. It's very highly adapted to
incredibly.
It's also very strange that the cephalopods have a very complex nervous system because they can move their arms like in any direction. We can only with our arms we can only move like one bone in two directions, like our elbow joint.
Right.
Like the cephalopods can move like any direction they want because they have, of course, no bones in them, just muscles.
Pretty smart overall too. At least octopus, right? Cuttlefish too, I think.
Yeah.
Can't remember. Yeah, cephalopods are always a group that I wish I knew more about. I try to read stuff when it comes out, but they do not have a good fossil record.
No.
There are some, but well, I shouldn't say that. Shelled cephalopods have a pretty good fossil record.
So like this one is a very good trend.
Yeah.
To see.
Orthocones. Yeah, that's actually a pretty cool
evolution. Yes, it's one of my favorite to show because it's so intuitive. Of course, like if you see this alone, it tells you that it looks like it's curled up, and it was curled up basically like over time.
I like that figure.
Yeah, of course. One thing I don't like about this figure, because there are a lot of other of these things that coiled their shells differently, like in a spiral figure or in a hairpin figure. It's very weird how these things coiled their shells. Like maybe you can pull up some of the hairpin ammonites, maybe not the right term. No, that's jewelry.
I think I know what you're saying. Like they kind of have this weird upwardly coiling.
Yeah. Coiled cephalopods. There it is. Like many different types of coiling. Yes.
Yeah, ammonites play around with that a lot.
Yeah, of course. Eventually, this form, like the ammonite, were favored because it was the most efficient shape, perhaps.
Right.
Yeah, for swimming.
And then some nautiloids did it too.
Yeah.
I mean, we still have the ones that did it around today.
Exactly.
But most of the orthocones were pretty streamlined, at least the big ones, like Endocerus and Camaracerus.
Where?
Some of like the early Paleozoic orthocones.
Oh yeah,
like
but big, very long, straight shell. Yes.
Yes. I think they made it into the Triassic, but then they kind of.
Well, aren't these a paraphyletic group? Aren't these a paraphyletic group to ammonites and such? The orthocone.
Ammonites?
No, the Orthinoceras group.
No, I don't think it's a paraphyly.
I thought they were the ammonites. They descended from straight shelled.
Yeah, I think the curled shell nautiloids we have today are a group of they're a separate group from ammonites. They're
yes. And I'm talking about,
I'm trying to remember the exact relationship.
I'm talking about the ancestors that had straight shells. Weren't they Orthinoceras, or at least related to Orthinoceras?
Yes, they were. So those are the. I think not. I'm trying to remember exactly what the nomenclature is. A lot of similar sounding words. Nautilus is a. Ooh, my Wi-Fi is.
Here, this is a good figure.
Great.
Like yeah, like this shape and this shape. This is the hairpin. I call it the hairpin shape.
Ah, yeah.
Yeah.
There are some very and then there are I think they're called scaphopods, which I don't know if they are directly cephalopods or a sister group to cephalopods, but they're these kind of strange, slightly curved horn-shaped organisms.
Yeah. And also snails did the same thing, more or less, with the shells. They also in a spiral shape.
But usually, I think there are some exceptions, but usually ammonites are pretty on top of each other, and then snails are either sinistral or dextral.
Yeah.
At least in how they coil.
So there's also a very weird evolution because their anus is on top of their head almost.
It's like on top of their head or something, right?
Yeah, yeah. So not only their shells twisted, the entire body within it twisted with it, basically. Yeah.
It is a
not very intelligent design, but it makes sense in evolution, of course.
It gets the job done.
Yeah.
That's all we can ask for.
Poor snails with their anus above their heads.
I mean, they're probably eating a lot of it too. Like, right? Aren't snails largely detritivores?
I don't know.
Not all of them, obviously. I know they're like predators and herbivores, but a lot of snails eat detritus, so maybe it's helping them out.
Mm-hmm. I was hoping that Jade maybe would join. Maybe she didn't at the time to join.
Oh, that's all right.
We have a farm too on our own.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Talking about birds and beavers and ammonites.
Birds and beavers.
It's like the birds and the bees, except it's the birds and the beaver.
Mm-hmm.
I think we hit everything he talked. It would be impossible to cover every single group he talked about, but we got the ones that are the most objectively misleading.
Yeah.
I think.
Of course, maybe we can tackle why, or the misconception that birds only emerge after the dinosaurs. Maybe you can tackle the misconception that the birds only appeared after dinosaurs. They evolved.
Why? Why? Which group only evolved after dinosaurs?
No, he says that according to evolutionists, birds evolved.
I have no idea where
he's
getting that from.
I know. But maybe you can tackle that problem.
I think, if anything, I think he got confused when he was reading a book or an article, and it said, modern birds appeared only after the dinosaurs went extinct. So Neo-aves.
Yeah.
Really, well, they kind of appeared at the very end of the Mesozoic, and then they radiated after the dinosaurs went extinct. But yeah, it's since Archaeopteryx was found, we kind of knew that dinosaurs and birds coexisted. It wasn't This wasn't something we retconned and we're like, oh well, we were wrong, but now we know. No, this is something
for a very long time.
We knew Archaeopteryx was from the Jurassic, and we're just like, all right, so dinosaurs and birds have coexisted since at least the Jurassic.
He has this idea that because birds are descended from dinosaurs, and you cannot have the ancestors coexist with the descendants. Therefore, birds only existed after the dinosaurs were gone. That's basically that's his thinking. I think. But
yeah, it's insane.
No, dinosaurs is a family, and during the Triassic, one tiny subset of that family emerged as birds, basically, within the larger dinosaur family, and that's how it works. It's not a linear progression or like a step by step. Yeah,
birds probably evolved in the Middle Jurassic, from the best we can see, from a group of coelurosaur dinosaurs, Paravians, closely related to dromaeosaurs and troodontids.
The Maniraptors.
Yes,
exactly. Oh, and it also mentions fiducia at one point about, yeah.
Yeah, he likes to. Creationists in general like fiducia,
Yeah.
and it's very strange because they throw around his name.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's not like fiducia saying birds didn't evolve.
No.
Fiducia has his own, admittedly false views on birds' origins. He thinks they're thecodonts.
Yes.
Which
it's a very outdated
not
taxon.
Yeah, exactly. Thecodonts aren't really a group, and pardon me, maybe he has a more updated view on what birds are, but he thinks that they're still archosaurs. They're still generally related to crocodiles, pterosaurs, and dinosaurs, but they're not, within dinosaurs. They're sister to dinosaurs, or they're more closer to crocs. I mean, none of it's really supportable, and he has no methodology, and his books are insane, but it's not like he's saying these organisms don't evolve. He just has his own very strange ideas on where they come from.
Of course, scientists can be wrong with evolution, like the wrong hypothesis of how evolution occurs.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
I think
one of the sorry, go ahead.
No, sorry.
One of the weirdest hypotheses on evolution I have ever seen is how caterpillars evolve from a hybrid between velvet worms and insects.
That's very strange. I was not familiar with this.
Yes.
Sounds very weird.
And it got published in a science paper too. It's now retracted, I hope, but it's very wrong. I think I can pull up the paper. Let me see. Velvet hybrid. Here, this is it. I think. Like caterpillars evolved from oncoforans by hybridogenesis. Yes. Oh, somebody just.
Wow. I reject the Darwinian assumption that larvae and their adults evolved from single common ancestor. Rather, I post that in animals that metamorphose, the basic types of larvae originate as a.
Yeah,
this is nuts.
It is a very nutty paper.
And this got accepted into PNAS?
Yes.
Jeez. Oh, I wonder what the response to this must have been.
It got highly criticized. I very think so.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
My favorite, like crazy. I don't even know if it got published, but before my time.
Jade is about to join too.
Okay.
She fell asleep. She had a headache, but she's now able to join. Go ahead. What you were about to say?
So my favorite kind of like insane paper, or I don't even think it's a paper. I don't think it was ever published. But there's a guy, and I can't remember his name. But he basically found a bunch of massive ichthyosaur vertebra, kind of lined up in these patterns, and he wrote a paper about a gigantic Triassic cephalopod. Because sometimes, so the idea is that octopus and squid will sometimes, mostly octopus, will kind of like arrange fish vertebra in patterns on the seafloor, because they're kind of smart and they do things we don't understand. And so this guy found these big, so some of the largest ichthyosaurs ever, Shoniosaurus, some of these like 55, 60 foot long ichthyosaur vertebra pattern that's vaguely similar. That is probably just a product of the skeleton decaying. And he had a talk, at least. I don't know if it ever made it to a paper, but it was in the news briefly. He hypothesized that there was a gigantic, at least 100-foot long Triassic squid that did this.
Wow. It's very
If you Google Triassic Kraken, I'm sure you can find some of the articles.
I like the title. Also, Jade, mic check, please.
Okay.
You're a bit crackling.
Okay, let me come back. Okay.
Mark McMenamin is his name.
Mark McMenamin. Oh, okay.
Yeah, he's got like a substantial. He's not like an insane person.
No.
Like he's done a lot of work with the Cambrian and Ediacaran and stuff.
Yeah, and I also think you have heard of Lynn Margulis, the founder of the endosymbiotic theory, of the hypothesis at least. Yes. And she also has very weird ideas about.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of these guys who do like work just have some very strange pet theories.
Yes. There is also, of course, no scientist is perfect. There are always exceptions to the rule. Like you can pick any scientist out there and basically use them as a support for any belief. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I mean, he's got a Wikipedia page. I didn't know he had a Wikipedia page.
Yeah. Now, let's go back to Fiducia. I've seen that Fiducia now claims that. Sorry. I've seen that Fiducia now claims. Fiducia now claims that not only birds are not dinosaurs, all maniraptors, including velociraptors, are not dinosaurs. They are, in fact, all birds.
Way of getting around the problem.
Yeah. Because he doesn't know how to do phylogenetics, and he refuses to learn.
Yeah. Citing Fiducia for your claims against evolution of birds is not really smart. Because now you have to admit that velociraptors are also birds, according to him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's got this idea in his head. It's like, if it has feathers, it's a bird.
Exactly.
Which you're not supposed to start with your conclusions, but he has this, obviously, because he's still kind of hanging on to thecodonts. There's this interesting fixation around traditional dinosaur characters. So these ideas of what particular groups are based on kind of outdated character. And I mentioned this briefly, apparently not enough to his name Nephilim, when I was pointing out, like, Fiducia's kind of arguing on old stuff.
You don't have to remember his name.
Yeah, and because about theropod teeth, and one of Fiducia's points is, Archaeopteryx doesn't have serrated teeth. Theropods have serrated teeth. Archaeopteryx is not a theropod. Which
I don't think that by that standard, T-Rex is not a theropod, because T-Rex didn't have serrated teeth. I think
it did.
Yeah,
it has serrations on the back sides of its teeth. Yeah.
Oh, really? Oh, I thought they were practically bananas.
They are banana shaped, but there are serrations on the sides. Yeah. But
right. My mistake.
That was a decent argument for maybe the 70s or the 80s, when he was kind of, he was putting pressure on people who were claiming dinosaurs, like Ostrom and Bacher were all like, maybe dinosaurs came from birds. And he was a very important person at that time, because, he's challenging these ideas when they're being formed and kind of pushing these guys to do some really important research. Yeah. But now he's just kind of like refusing to give up his idea, even though, because now we have a bunch of theropods that don't have serrated teeth that are obviously theropods. Like
Dromiomymes.
Ornithomimosaurs, there are Xynosaurs, some Alvarezsaurs, some basal oviraptors, and even some Troodontids too at this point. So I don't know if it's still. I knew it was a point of his at least by 2012.
Well, according to Fiducia, Troodontids are also birds, I think, because they are raptors. Yeah, it's very weird.
It is an absolutely absurd thing to move all of these maniraptors. Like, if he can do a phylogenetic analysis with all of these taxa in the context of other theropods and birds, using characters, at least 100 characters that aren't trash, that other people can be like, why are you using this character? This doesn't make any sense. This is here. And he can get all of Maniraptora as birds. That is a result that would be worth talking about. Yeah. But instead, there's just kind of like, I'm going to write another book, and here are some of my graduate students to pontificate on Epindrosaur scapulas without also doing the goddamn analysis. Yeah. It's very frustrating.
They also have to change the name from band into mand, instead of birds are not dinosaurs.
Menaraptors,
Now,
yeah.
now Menaraptors are not dinosaurs.
Oh God.
Do you know they wear stickers? They have badges at SVP.
With
The-
bats
so-
of band.
Yeah, so Bandit.
Yeah.
Yeah, so at the Society for Vertebrate Paleontology meetings, which I have not been to yet, but I get to hear fun stories about how they apparently like are very proud that
Bandits.
Yeah, they
it's
were called
bizarre.
bandits. I remember.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
You know, this is so funny for me because I used to follow the dinosaur mailing list assiduously, you know, for decades, and I was following it as all the Chinese fossils were being discovered. Really
right. So you
exciting
probably got to see this happen.
time. Oh, it was so cool because, you know, every day you'd see these paleontologists and paleo artists. And never knock paleo artists. These guys know their stuff. They do the same kind of research because they want to get everything right. They know how, you know,
Right.
muscles are laid on bones. They understand the, you know, the biomechanics of things. And they're constantly asking paleontologists questions. So I'm
The good
following
ones.
this. Yeah, the good one. Yeah, you're right. Because there's some crappy.
Do you
And
know
I
Dave
have.
Peters?
Dave
Yeah.
Peters. Oh my God, no.
Yeah.
Yeah, I follow
yeah,
a bunch of them on Twitter, and periodically you'll have somebody come up with a bad paleo art, you know, and they're like, why the hell did this magazine use this or something? But during that time, God, it was so exciting watching people discuss and argue. And I don't mean fight, you know, I mean, no, I think you're wrong about that, you know, that particular aspect.
And for a
of
while,
this,
Fiducia was very much just that, like just someone.
He was in the middle of it. And there were the banders, the B-A-N-D, you know, the bad, B-A-D, birds are dinosaurs. And when I pronounce it, I go bad did, the birds are dinosaur descendants. So there were those three camps, bad,
Right.
bad did, and band. And it was really interesting watching them interact with each other. And over time, you know, bad did went away. And, you know, are not dinosaur descendants. Birds are freaking dinosaurs. How cool is that? And there were still a few little banders out there, you know, sort of, you know, being the little gadflies, and that's okay. And over time, they just like, well, yeah, you know what? You guys are right. We're wrong. We tried to poke in every little corner, and birds are dinosaurs. Yeah, he was like the only one holding to band. And it got to the point where
is Alan John Ruben not of Bennett and as well?
Yeah.
Or
yeah, but he was the most.
Did he give up?
Yeah.
Did John Ruben give up?
I don't remember, but I remember Fiducia being like leading. Let's just say he was leading the banders.
Yeah.
And he was like the most outspoken voice that I remember.
Right, and he's got some students too.
Yeah.
Who are on his train.
It's just hysterical that he won't give it up. But you have these scientists, and you know, it doesn't mean he's not a bad scientist in some ways. Stuck on this. He won't give on band. Birds are not dinosaurs. Nilsson, who was a really good botanist and a great teacher, but he had his own weird idea of evolution, which doesn't mean he wasn't a good scientist in some ways. And then you've got Chatterjee, who still thinks Proto-Avis is a thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jade, you remember what bird he was talking about, the Nephilim? In a site you put like the beaver name of not an actual beaver, of course, but you also put the name of a bird.
Yeah. Yes, I'll get it for you. Because it's all this one.
How's the bird called?
I keep Carl, whatever his name is. I always forget his name.
You're breaking up for me at least, Jade.
Hang on, let me again, and I'll aim for you. Okay. You know what? I think I need to close something here, and that should work. Hang on. Stuff and come back in.
Okay, can you say the name, or don't you remember the name of? Oh.
I think she's just checking her stuff up, making sure everything works.
Yeah. because she put the name of the beaver thing in the side chat during the hangout, and also the bird name, but I can remember the bird name. But yeah, the bandits are now very outdated.
Yeah, but I
Yeah.
at this point, right? I'd be surprised if they gave up.
David Peters is also a very interesting story. He's not an expert, not like Fatusia, but he has like so many drawings out there on Google. And when you Google search pterosaurs or any type of evolution of any tetrapod, you will see pictures of him, of his drawings everywhere.
It's incredibly frustrating because last year I started kind of the outline of a pterosaur project I was interested in, and I'm looking at cervical vertebra of a bunch of rhamphorhynchoid pterosaurs. And I had no idea about him, and I'm like, wow, look at all these figures. Look at all these figures. Look at and then I went on a site and I'm just reading through this stuff. Has some very peculiar thoughts on how different vertebrate groups evolved. It's nuts, and he will infer these crazy things from like scratches on the rocks. It's odd, to say the least.
Oh, Jade's best to put the name of the bird Vegavis. Of noem je nou?
Right.
How do you pronounce it?
It's a
Vegavis.
Vegavis, yes, Vegavis. We already covered we already covered that previously. Oh, yeah.
That was it. That was what. Yeah, and see, the thing is, the article calls it a Jurassic duck.
Yeah, but it's not really an actual duck, is it?
No.
It's a stem member of that group.
Yeah, forms. So swans are more closely related to ducks than this duck is.
Yes.
Yeah, but again, they're this calls, what is it, Dr. Carl
Werner,
whatever his name. But this comes from him, and he is deliberately misreading the the scientific literature.
Yes.
He wants it to be a duck, so it's a duck. And there's a platypus. He also talks about a platypus, which, hey, guess what? That's the one he's right about. It is a platypus. It's a real early platypus, but it's a platypus. But most of his are completely wrong.
But is it from the Mesozoic?
I don't remember.
Let's see here.
I don't think there are Mesozoic platypus. I know there are fossil platypus from like the Eocene, maybe the Oligocene, like Obdurodon.
Mm-hmm.
Like it says here 9 million years. Maybe this is a genus, maybe a big family. Oh, it's 61 million years according to Wikipedia. But
that's still not the Cretaceous.
No.
Yeah, there's a lot of purposeful misdirection and lying.
Yeah, it's the whole point of what they're trying to say is that all of these animals live with dinosaurs. And
this is the extinct species, the fossil. I think he's talking about the very very ancient platypus species.
Right. And Jade, you were around when we figured out what the owl was, right?
Yeah.
Yes, that was cool. I was so glad you found that, because that one was puzzling me. I knew what he was. Who it came from, let's put it that way, because all over everything I looked up at every creationist site, pointed to the same idiot, but I didn't know. I'm pretty good at finding the what they're usually talking about and finding the actual scientific papers, but that owl, and you know what? It was as you were talking about it, I remembered reading about that long ago, that the so-called owl. But that happens. I mean, this is the whole point behind so-called Nebraska Man. I've done quite a bit of research into. I even brought up to some creationists that there is a current.
This is the owl.
Forensic.
This is the owl he's talking about.
I know, I love it. Don't you love it? But I found a forensic forensic science textbook, a currently used one. In this forensic science textbook, it warns the the students that are studying this to be careful because pig molars look like human molars.
Yeah.
Right.
So even today they're saying, hey guys, look, when you find a molar, be careful. It could be, and they also point out that it might be human fingers, could be bear fingers, and they give the students.
Minor correction: the molar was not really a pig; it was a peccary.
It was a peccary, yeah. Well,
Yes.
but they do point out that basically that
it's a minor nitpicky point.
You're right.
Yeah.
It was a peccary. You're right, but the entire family, because you're looking at an animal with a head roughly the size of a human head, and they're omnivores like we are, and so their molars are similar to ours. Their other teeth aren't, but their molars are, and it was just a mistake, and it was a mistake out of a time period when people were just going nuts for dinosaurs, and the dinosaur wars had just been going on previous to this. And if you look at the actual papers, there's two in Science, and I forget where the other one is, where they describe this. The first one in Science is not such a big deal, but the second one is really great because I'm really bad with remembering names, unfortunately.
Harry
Sorry about that.
Osborn?
No, it wasn't. Osborn is the guy who really pushed it, and Osborn is with Marsh or Cope. I always forget.
Wait, which?
Marsh and Cope and the Dinosaur Wars. Osborn.
Who's Osborn's?
Yeah, Harry Osborn was the first who made the discovery of the Nebraska man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Well, actually, it wasn't really him. It was a local farmer who was also an amateur paleontologist.
Yeah.
Quite good at that.
I think Harry Osborn was the one who proposed. It was
yes, he was.
Yeah.
Pay too much attention to Osborn today because of his racial theories.
Oh. Yeah.
He was kind of, and he was I can't remember who it was. I hate it when I do this, but because it was Marsh and Cope who carried on the Dinosaur Wars. Great story, and people here in this country were following that in the newspapers the way people follow sporting events. And he was like Marsh's assistant or something like that. It's either Marsh or Cope, but anyway, so he proposed this, and he put Hespero something or other.
Hesperornis?
Yeah, that was what he called it, something like that.
With Marsh.
It was Marsh, yeah. Okay, so it was Marsh that he was. I thought so. Anyway, so he proposed this in Science and in something else. I can't remember the other journal. But then a different scientist, a man who was an expert on teeth, came forward in, I think, 1925 with a retraction in Science, saying, "Well, guess what? It's not a human tooth, it's a peccary." But what's interesting about that article, and this is the one that I point all the time because they're so hung up on Nebraska man, I don't bother to read it. Available. I've made it available for them. He describes why they thought it was a human tooth, and he goes into detail. He talks about how they'd recently discovered, well, I don't remember how many, a decade maybe, but there was a lot of excitement over teeth found in Java. And back then, they didn't have graphs, but a lot of the information was spread by just, details. They would describe a tooth, they'd give the dimensions and so on and so forth.
Right.
And, there are certain terms to use for the number of the crown or whatever. And it's not a language I'm familiar with. But anyway, so he describes all this. He says, well, we got this tooth and it just fit. It was possibly a human tooth. But he goes into detail explaining why they thought tooth. But you can't get the creationists to pay attention to this. And that whole picture, man, come from the London Illustrated News, which was basically a tabloid, had no clue what he was drawing. He just made it all up out of his head. The article was made up, and it was done to satisfy an audience who was hungry for this kind of material, just like tabloids do today.
Yeah.
But you'll still see the creationists bring up that stupid effing picture. I thought it was Nebraska Man. And I think the artist based it on some depictions of Cro-Magnon Man, of all things.
Oh yeah.
Which isn't a type of human. It's just an early,
yeah.
You know,
it's like a how do I put it? Just a group of humans living at a particular area.
Yeah, that's all it is.
Yeah.
That's all it is. But you will still see there's that stupid a chit tract.
Oh.
You probably are familiar with that, and they have.
Shall I put it up? Shall I put it up? check.
Oh, if you got it, it's hysterical. If you can find it, it's hysterical because it's called Big Daddy.
Oh yeah, Big Daddy.
Big Daddy, yeah. And it's got that one picture. It's got that one picture that allegedly shows, you know, what scientists think. It's got a chimpanzee at one end and such incredible bullshit. But I still see this being depicted. Just a couple. There's that. Yeah, you see the picture there.
It's in two. Here is one, and here's the other picture. Oh, here are the two together.
But, yeah, look at that. See, it says Lucy, Heidelberg Man. There it is. Nebraska Man, Piltdown Man, Peking Man. It goes supposedly 500,000 years old, but it's all evidence has disappeared. That's not true.
False. It's Homo erectus. It's Homo erectus, yes, and we have lots of Homo erectus specimens.
Right, and what he's talking about is some of the early fossils that were found by, amongst other people, Teilhard de Chardin, I always mispronounce his name, and they were examined, but then they went missing for a while, because they were in China. China's not exactly a, you know, at that time was a great place for keep. But we have tons of Homo erectus fossils. That's utter bullshit.
Yeah.
Was a very, very, very clever a fraud. It was
a fraud.
But I have like 3 books on Piltdown Man. 4 books on Piltdown Man, and one of whom was written by one of the guys who was there at the time. And I've done some research into this. At the time, there were scientists who not only didn't believe in Piltdown Man, but correctly identified the parts, with the exception of that one tooth, because I think it was a gorilla tooth that they kind of threw in there. Correctly identified the parts. And one of them, chimpanzee jaw, a partial human. And whoever did it very cleverly, because they left out the parts that would be identifiable. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah, it was like, okay, we're going to leave out these parts, because if we concluded them, people would be really obvious fraud. But I think there was like a chimpanzee jaw, part of a human skull, and I think they threw in a gorilla or an orangutan tooth. Was orangutan tooth?
I think it was a human and an orangutan at least.
Yeah. And so, even a scientist, I have a reference to it, who stood up at this Royal Society of something or other and denounced it as a fraud. And there were a whole group of German scientists who said this is utter bullshit. And you had these scientists correctly identifying as a fraud. At the time it was discovered, it fit into the whole God is an Englishman kind of concept. In other words, there's no greater human being on the face of the earth than an Englishman, because we own the fucking world.
They were kind of jealous. They were kind of jealous against the Germans for their Neanderthals and the French for their paintings.
Right. So Piltdown Man sort of won for political reasons.
Yeah.
You know,
that makes sense.
But again, there were a lot of English scientists who thought Piltdown Man was a bunch of bullshit. And this is why people have to look at things in the context of their history. And it's also why, as I've mentioned before, I spent a lot of time in the 19th century. I love those old books. So that's utter bullshit. And we've already talked about Nebraska Man, which was an honest error. Perhaps they were a little over enthusiastic in the beginning, but it was an honest error, because even Osborne even said that we have to identify this further. In his article, the first one in Science, he says, we have to wait until so-and-so sees this, because he's like an expert in teeth.
Yeah, and also Osborne criticized the tabloid journal for depicting, for depicting a whole human being, or at least an ape man, out of a whole tooth.
Right, and
Yeah.
it was just it was just an artist who got a commission from the magazine saying, "Hey, we need a drawing for this issue because there's this like readers will be interested in." So they just teach, okay, sure, fine, I'll just make something up, which he did. And then you have Neanderthal Man, and this is funny because what they're talking about is the very first skeleton of Neanderthal found, and that misled everybody because it was old man with what arthritis and rickets or something like that.
Yeah.
And so that completely misled people. And you will still see people like Neff and True. All Neanderthals are just
Old man.
deformed humans.
Yeah. But
Yeah, they're deformed
we have children, skeletons of children.
Yeah. We have children. We have the DNA, for goodness sakes. We have lots of Neanderthal skeletons. But because of the one that was found, and it was found at a time when people weren't really, you have to find a whole bunch of skeletons before you can make really good determinations, not just of Neanderthal, but of all other types of hominids. They described it, and some people thought, well, that's what Neanderthals look like. And so we've had this misconception since.
Yeah. Also, I want to mention.
Oh, and then there's.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead.
Go ahead. I want
Again.
to mention about Bilderman because it was first shown to be dubious because we found so many actual transitional fossils in Africa. So Bilderman became a very odd anomaly based not based on the location because we keep finding many early humans in Africa and not in England, but not, and also the traits because early humans show first like more, how do we call it? The Bilderman showed a large human brain with an ape jaw, but it's the opposite in the African specimens. So yeah, it was very odd. This piece didn't fit together with all the other pieces, so it was left out.
Right. Well, there can be anomalies. I mean, you could find a skeleton of a human with acromegaly, and you'd think, oh, that's a different species. If you didn't know what to look for, when in fact it's just a disorder. What Andre the Giant.
Do you mean hobbits? Do you mean the hobbit species?
Acromegaly is a disorder where I think it's a disease of the pituitary gland where people keep growing and growing and growing and growing and growing and growing and growing, and their features get what's the word I'm thinking of?
Not giants.
Well, they do get, people get very large, but their features and their bodies get very dense, sturdy. Their facial features are very harsh. I can't think of the right term.
And you also see many of these pictures with very giant skeletons, very fake.
Yeah, but there are no giant skeletons, but there are people with acromegaly, and I can understand somebody would dig up a skeleton of someone with acromegaly and think that was a giant. Knowledge that hasn't happened, but someone who wasn't experienced in anthropology or paleontology might mistake that.
Exactly.
The features are so different.
Like how mammoths or I think or mastodons skulls were mistaken to be cyclops.
Yeah,
or elephants.
They got that big hole in the center. Yeah, what's her name? Adrienne Mayer has done a lot of work on that. She's fantastic. But yeah, if you look up acromegaly, do you know who Andre the Giant was? The wrestler.
Yes.
Okay, well, he had acromegaly.
Oh yeah. I'm not familiar with that person.
Yeah.
He's
Andre the Giant.
Have you seen The Princess Bride?
For who?
No, he was in it.
Movie. Yeah, well, look him up sometime. Andre the Giant, and you look at his features, and what's really interesting is if you can find a picture of him with his parents, because his parents are normal sized and he's this great big huge guy. Now today, most cases of acromegaly can be repaired, or contained by giving someone hormones, but occasionally they don't work. There's a woman who died the last few years.
Of course, according to G-Men, giving hormones is harmful.
Yeah, sure. But yeah, but there was a woman who died in the last few years whose acromegaly they just simply could not contain, which is really unfortunate. But Andre the Giant, I think it was discovered too late, and the stress, I think the stress of the disease, I think he died of heart failure because of that. But people don't die of acromegaly; they die of other things that are caused by the disease, the stress. Some people get to the point, like this woman I was talking about, where they can't walk anymore. Much weight on their legs, which is something, again, these creationists with their freaking giants don't understand. We for the legs, these people who are like 8 feet tall get too big for their legs to be able to hold them up. Yeah.
So is there something more we can tackle about this chick tract segment?
Oh, New Guinea man. New Guinea man. There is no such thing. I had a long time looking into this, and a pair so of other people, because most of what I've discovered is other people who've looked into this, and nobody even looking into discoveries from 1970. What I think happened, article, because there was something back then about some fossils found in New Guinea, and he made up New Guinea man himself. So that doesn't exist.
What a genius.
And it says earliest and best established fossils. It is a modern human. He goes, so what's the difference? Well, there isn't any, you dumb fuck. And then he goes back. It's
within the modern human gene pool, at least.
Exactly. It's just early humans that lived in a particular area. That's it. And Heidelberg man, it's
like Inuit people or something like that. They live in
exactly. Yeah, I pointed that out once. I once pointed out that you could talk about white trash man as sort of a joke. As a joke to some friends of mine who, because we always joke about certain parts of our family being white trash, but you find these people who, and it's just the culture.
Like a Flintstone version of living in a white trailer park.
Yes, exactly. So it's meaningless, or redneck man if you want to be more polite. But it's just a particular culture. And Heidelberg man was Heidelbergensis, but we have a lot more fossils. You can't go by the first fossil we found or grab one fossil and say that's representative of everything. And the same thing with Lucy. He says nearly all experts agree Lucy was a chimp. Fuck no. Didn't necessarily. Yeah, I guess it's a Google Quake or something. But yeah, we all know there are lots and lots of fossils of Australopithecus afarensis. And Nephi's that thing about the feet is bullshit. Yeah, we don't have Lucy, quote unquote Lucy. We don't have Lucy's foot bones. Foot bones are little things and they get scattered. Same thing with hand bones. We have lots and lots of Australopithecus afarensis foot bones and hand bones, so we know what their feet and hands look like.
Yeah, it is something that I've noticed that there is this kind of fascination with Lucy, like she's the only goddamn one.
Oh. And I did a little brief video about Lucy's knee because people keep bringing that up. To that, this comes from like one guy who tied Lucy together with the knee that was found the year before, and kind of made up the whole Lucy's knee thing. The thing is that if you look at the knee that was found,
I suddenly left because my browser shut down for some reason.
Oh no!
But we are still live, fortunately.
Within a certain period of time, you're still alive. But I mentioned Lucy and how these creationists are obsessed with Lucy's knee, which wasn't Lucy's knee at all. It was found the year before. And no scientist ever said that was Lucy's knee. We know it's not Lucy's knee because we have the upper knee of the one leg and the lower knee of the other leg. So why would she have a third knee?
Yeah.
Believe this nonsense, then if you don't believe in evolution, if you think that violates your view of the Bible, then go ahead and believe that. They'll just make themselves look worse when they try to defeat science. I once described this as it's like you got a bunch of people together. And I live not too far from the Sierra Nevada mountain. Well, I live on Santa Cruz County on the Monterey Bay. But the Sierra Nevada mountains are over. They're great big huge, mountain range going up and down California.
Right.
It's so to me what these creationists are doing. It's like a bunch of people going to the Sierra Nevada mountains, filling their arms with rocks, and running away, giggling, going, "Look, we're destroying the Sierra Nevadas." Because
I like that.
that is the equivalent of what they are doing when they try to poke holes in evolution. They're picking on little things that people don't, in some cases, people don't know. And in some cases, it's because they haven't bothered to.
Check it out themselves.
Nephi in a hangout last year sometime, I think. And he loves to sharpshoot. He'll say, "Well, show me how this evolved. Show me how that evolved." So I'm watching this hangout, and he's telling this guy, "So show me how the mouth parts of the locust evolved." I'm thinking, okay, well, I don't know if there's anything that says mouth parts of locust. Let me look at arthropods.
I wonder what would happen if you ask him how did God design this, or how did the Creator design this?
The Creator did, but so
Yeah.
it took me.
God did it.
It took me less than a minute to find a really great paper, the evolution of the arthropod jaw. Because you can't go to a locust.
Aren't the arthropod jaws not homologous? Like we're saying, for example, the fangs of spiders are not homologous to the certain mouth parts of of insects.
Right, and this went into that, and it showed how you have different kinds of arthropods, and you showed the insects, but the thing is, it took me less than a minute to find that. So these people are being totally disingenuous.
Right.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, just like from today, all I had to do for the owl was I did Cretaceous owl, and it was the first link, and then it was like, it's not an owl.
Yeah.
Like there's no research or effort put into it, because like if you see something that immediately confirms your particular bias.
He got these owls and
just gonna go for it
from creation.com. I think. When did he not? The creation.com article.
Yeah, it was a creation.com article, or it might have been Answers in Genesis, because they're very incestuous and they steal from each other all the time.
Yeah.
Or whatever. But
also,
I was in a.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, to give you another idea, I was in a hangout with Neph once, and he challenged people to how did the ear develop? Not one I knew, because I have a really cool book, evolution of the ear, evolution of hearing, and the thing is, both is sort of irrelevant, and I kind of explained it to him, because hearing apparati, going from all vertebrates, insects, although I don't know the insect one too much, is based on the hair cell. Is the unit of hearing.
Yeah, I posted it also on the Great Debate community about this article.
Yes, you did. Yeah, there it is, the hair cell. Right, isn't that great? Now you see, the hair cell is the important part, and they have them in fish too. That the lateral line of the fish, it's based on the hair cell. So all of the other things that we have, all of the other devices, the way it is, simply exists to funnel sound to the hair cells.
It's like the equivalent of the first light-sensitive cell of the eye.
Right. Yes. And it's cool because you can take the the cochlea of the ear is just basically a rolled up lateral line. It's just all these neuromast cells. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
And our eustachian tubes, I'm a little overly familiar with, since mine are nothing but scar tissue. Our eustachian tubes come from the pharyngeal slits or pharyngeal pouches.
Yeah. So if you didn't have an eardrum, we basically have one gill left.
Yeah.
Because it goes from the outside to the inside of your
Yeah, and it's to balance the pressure. Right, which is why I get these little ear infections all the time, because if if I get something, an allergy or a cold or something, my eustachian tubes swell up and the fluid builds up in my ears and I get a minor ear infection.
Flight must be a nightmare for you.
Properly.
Flight must be a nightmare for you, is it not?
If I chew gum, I'm fine.
All right. Good thank God.
And I cannot, however, go on roller coasters or anything like that.
So
it's
that's
too
a
quick.
bummer.
Yeah, the change of the pressure is too quick.
No.
It's extremely painful because someone thought they were being funny once and told me that a particular ride at Disneyland did not have a big drop in it. Yeah, and I was in pain for 3 days.
No.
So yeah, that wasn't fun. Many years ago though. And boy, did I scream at them. That made me feel better in a different way. But yeah, so they don't understand the basics of these things, because if you dig down, yeah. So where did the eye come from? Well, it came from a light sensitive spot, which was just a pigmented spot. And I pointed out to some people with pigments. I said, yeah, pigments. Like about how different pigments absorb light. We get photosynthesis. It just the way it works. And the ear, is basically the hair cell, and everything else just evolved to, funnel sound into the ear. And then there are other parts that, if you follow it step by step, you'll see you don't want to bother doing that.
I'm now showing another article I posted, and it's about the G protein coupled receptors. And basically, it's a very huge family of molecular proteins. And one of the groups it includes is the rhodopsins, and these are the light sensitive proteins that are used in in your retina. So this is how they evolve, basically. It's a very deep evolution. It's basically happened in protists. This early diversification of these proteins for different functions.
They completely ignore all this. They're too busy picking up their rocks at the bottom of the mountain.
But I mean, if you look up the answers for these questions, like how did this evolve, you most often find like paper after paper after paper with great detail of how this evolved. But when you ask a creationist or an ID proponent to ask, okay, how was this designed? And they go, well, the designer did it. That's it. That's all they can say. Well, there's no detail at all.
Right. Well, Nestle, you may be familiar with the fact I've had a conversation with a certain person. I can't remember who it is right now. Over, he kept saying, well, how did warm-bloodedness evolve?
Ooh.
And I had to point out to him.
When was this?
It's been over the last year. A couple times I brought it up. And I had to point out to him, warm-bloodedness isn't really an accurate term.
No.
What we have to talk about is thermoregulation.
Yes.
There's some animals that are warm-blooded sometimes and cold-blooded the other time, if you're going to use those terms.
Tuna
it's not that simple. Yeah, I was just about to bring up tuna, because they're fish, but they're kind of warm-blooded. That's why using the term warm-blooded and cold-blooded aren't good terms. You should talk about thermoregulation and various strategies for thermoregulations, and various animals use different strategies for thermoregulation. They don't just have one.
Right. Some animals can heat parts of their bodies, but other, tunas will shunt warm blood back to the core to keep their core hot. So they're technically endotherms in their core muscles, but their outside muscles are cooler. The blood is cooler on the outside. It's a very strange system. I also have to read a paper about...
you have also something called mesothermic. It's right in the middle of endothermy.
Where some of the dinosaurs fall.
And ectothermy, yeah.
All right. I'm gonna bounce. I gotta read a paper on theropod hands for tomorrow that I haven't looked at yet.
All right. And I think I'm going to end the hangout soon. Perhaps we can talk about one last thing before we wrap this up, because it's very late. We're late right now where I am. Let's see the last thing of this jig tract. Motherman, this genius thinks we came from a monkey. Well, I'm of the opinion that of the position that humans are still monkeys right now. So I'm basically in the ham group. The ham.
Yeah.
Humans are monkeys.
Yes, I agree.
I like
and again,
yeah,
it depends on how you define monkey. And monkey is, again, not really a scientific term.
Yeah.
Right. Have you guys seen the chick tract with Dungeons and Dragons?
Yes. Yes.
No.
They made a movie out of it.
Did.
And it's phenomenal, and I recommend it.
Yeah. It's absolutely hilarious. But yeah, it's just we have that's another thing they don't understand, and they don't want to understand. That's a big part of it. They don't understand the usage of terminology.
Right.
And when you try to explain it to them, they say you're being you're arguing semantics.
Yeah.
Yeah, I heard a lot of that.
No,
today.
I'm sorry. Semantics. There is for example, there's a common usage of the word evolution, and then there's a specific scientific usage of the word evolution, as in the biological theory of evolution. And words have specific meanings in specific
context.
Context. And
right.
The one I love now is the word critical, mostly because I brought it up in something, and Steve sort of corrected me on it, and it made me laugh. Talking about someone who's being critical of a movie, critical of a they are taking, that's one form of critical. If you are in the hospital and you are critical, that's a different thing altogether.
All right.
Yeah.
And then if a nuclear power plant goes critical, you want to get the hell out of there because you're in trouble.
Right.
But then Steve pointed out that he says, but we run nuclear power plants at critical. So there's basically there's two different critical there. So, in the Navy, they're running their nuclear power plants at critical. Okay, fine. But if something's going critical, that's a different kind of critical, and you want to get as far away from there as possible because you're going to be toast. So it's just like a lot of words. There are different usages of the word, and we use them in context. It drives me crazy. And they'll say you're playing semantics. And what they did something like that today again.
Yes, they did.
Yeah.
It's very annoying. You can sit there and you can when I've learned to debate and to and to to have discussions, and that one of the most important things is to define your terms. And you define your terms, and then you go on and use those definitions. Even if you don't like the definitions, you may use them for the sake of argument. Okay, for the sake of argument, I'll use this definition.
Yeah.
But these guys, you will define your terms, and then later they'll say, no, that's not what that means.
Right. And you have to spend the entire time explaining basic science to them. And then they criticize you for not.
Explain Neff how he was misusing words.
Constantly.
Like information. What does genetic information mean? And they will never say anything about the definition unless you give an example. Let me give like a gene duplication. Oh, that's not genetic information because yada yada yada. It's never defined.
And it can't be defined.
Right. They say it's not new information because it's a second copy of the gene. They don't understand that yes, you may have a second copy of the gene, but that may alter the way the organism behaves, whatever. I mean, we've got the example of maize from corn, for example. Maize came from corn via polyploidy. Yeah, so you can say, well, yeah, you just duplicated the genome. Yeah, but we've completely changed the way the plant grows to begin with, and we've also changed the way the corn cob grows from a single row of seeds to what we're looking at now. Although what we're looking at now, of course, has been perfected over by humans many generations. But the original ancestral corn, had a whole bunch of seeds around a cob. And as I said, the growth pattern of the plant is completely different. Maize is straight up and it does have some branches. Teosint is branching. It's a completely different growth pattern. Yeah. So yes, you have duplicating the genome has changed changed everything about the way the plant works. And when you duplicate genes, even if you're just duplicating one gene, you now have a greater chance of that gene being mutated. You also have a greater chance of, I can't think of the right terms, maybe Nessa, but some genes have, right, they have more than one responsibility. So if you duplicate a gene, and let's say that gene does A and B, right? The gene does A and B.
I've seen it. I've seen some papers on how evolution follows gene duplication. I can look up the term. Yeah.
Yeah. So what happens is the one gene now does A, and B. They've each taken up the other. But what may happen then is, let's say gene which does B now does B in like power mode, right?
Right.
So
I think it's called subfunctionalization.
Right.
Perhaps.
So perhaps if B is involved in metabolism, you've now jacked up the metabolism of the animal.
Right. That happened in a group of monkeys with digestive enzymes, a duplication that actually let them digest more plant material.
And that's, but yeah, I mean, I don't know a lot about this subject. I just know outside of it. But when you try to explain this to them and ask them to look it up, they won't do it at all. They just think it's a second set of, it doesn't do anything. Yes, it does. And we get entire new species that way. The goldfish, the diploid animal, how cool is that?
That is actually incredibly strange.
Yeah.
There aren't a lot of polyploid animals.
No, it's mostly plants.
Yeah, mostly plants. Well, they say from 30 to 80% of plants are polyploid. And the reason for the big range is because we've only done the genes of so many plants. So if we keep doing, finding the entire genomes of different plants, and it keeps staying at the amount that we have now, it's going to be 80%. But given that we've only seen so many plants, they're estimating the low end could be 30%. Plant that's important for humans is polyploid.
Yeah.
Hybrid as well. That's how we get bread wheats. Two instances of hybridization with the agalops, which is a grass, and polyploidism. So we have the hexaploid. The result of that is something called gluten, which allows bread to rise.
Yeah, and also some crops is also like have an uneven number of copies of the genome.
Yes. Yeah.
And these are sterile.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, they do. So it's all really, really fascinating. But it said polyploidism isn't as common in animals, but yeah, I did find a paper that was really interesting. It turns out the goldfish are polyploid.
Yeah. Also, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I just finished because I want to do one last thing before we end the
I'm done. Yeah, I'm done.
During the conversation on Steve's Hangout, I said that it depends on how you define mammals, whether this beaver is a mammal or not. And you Alex, said that's a very interesting question, but we never got to it. Yes.
Right. So there's a distinction between mammalia, which is the crown, and mammaliforms, which is the stem and the crown. And that's the reason that exists is kind of, again, a testament to the strength of the transitional lineage we have for mammals. So mammaliforms is defined almost exclusively by like skeletal characters. So like tricuspid teeth, occlusion in your molars. There's some other stuff, but I can't remember off the top of my head. And then mammalia, the crown, is defined by, like milk production and I'd say it's defined by hair, but that's not really the case because we have, we know hair goes farther down into mammaliforms. But so like the traditional mammal characteristics kind of define mammalia, but
they don't really show up in fossils because they like nipples and hair are
Exactly.
not very often fossilized.
Yeah.
Exactly. So mammaliforms is very much kind of like it groups everything, like because there are it's the same thing with placentals and marsupials, which have placental is kind of Eupharia is what placentals is includes placentals and I think marsupials and the other thing, but Eupharia is like the stem. It includes all the fossil groups because again, it's a little hard to tell if your organism's placental just based on the fossil record.
Yeah.
Same with Metatheria, which is I think marsupial. Yeah. It's
as I pointed out, some creationists. Again, it's very difficult to try to talk to them about the idea that, we pick certain characteristics, and according to these characteristics, we do a classification, and we have the old-fashioned classification, which isn't reptiles, but because it's still useful. It's something people understand. It eventually will probably disappear. The whole kingdom family,
right.
The way I always remembered it is killing pirates can't offer fucking good sport. That was my version of it.
I like it.
And
I might start using that.
But yeah, I do too. Oh yeah, remember? Okay, killing pirates can't offer fucking good sport. Yeah, I love that one. So one of the points I made is, so we have what we call mammals, right?
Right.
And we've defined them according to certain characteristics. Under mammals, we have monotremes, which are really odd for a lot of reasons, including they lay eggs. Now, we could have, when monotremes were discovered in Australia, the scientists could have said, well, these aren't mammals because they lay eggs.
Exactly.
We're going to say, we're only going to call marsupials and placentals mammals. We're going to call monotremes something else. We'll have another group that includes both the monotremes and mammals.
Right.
Scientists couldn't have done that, but they didn't. They chose a different route. They decided that, right, because after all, the monotremes don't even have any. They don't have nipples.
Yeah, they just sweat milk, and it's also very interesting,
right?
Because
Exactly.
The mechanism for how milk is produced is, I think, it's homologous with sweat glands.
Yeah, that is the proposed developmental origin for lactation is from a similar placode for how sweat glands develop from hair cells.
But at the time, as I said, when monotremes were first discovered and were quite the, whoa, what the we have here, sense to decide that these weren't mammals. They didn't have enough characteristics to be called mammals, and we'd call them something else. It wouldn't change the relationships one bit.
Yeah.
It would just be decided to group things a particular way. And over time, as we learn more about DNA,
right,
learn because we now have microscopes, and we also have fossils that allow us to even trace things on a microscopic level, looking at, as I mentioned, the evolution of bone, looking at a bone under a microscope, bone, fossilized bone under a microscope, and following the traces, because at one time like placoderms, it has this like plywood kind of structure. It's really interesting.
Yeah, they have like an
these
incredibly
changes.
hard dentine too, that because dentine's usually pretty soft.
Yeah.
But it works like enamel. It's very strange.
Right. And so we can follow these things. So we have all these new tools, we have electron microscopes. We could also run fossils through an MRI machine to see the inside. So we have all these new tools, and as we get these new tools, we get new information. We start shuffling things along the, old-fashioned phylogenetic tree. But for the most part, it doesn't change relationships. The main core part of it. For example, you might look at something and go, oh, I see this is still an antecedent of that, but it comes from off a different stem.
Right.
That's mostly all there is to it. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. In school long ago, just to tell you, this is long, long ago. One of our zoology, and one of our projects we had to do was to draw a phylogenetic tree. What we thought was correct. Well, I ended up getting lost in the library at UCSC, which is not where I was going, searching mollusks. Because mollusks at that time, we didn't have, you remember I'm old, we didn't have any genetics for mollusks at the time. And there were 3 potential schemes for mollusks. And depending on whether you're looking at embryology, whether you're looking at, did segmentation come first? Did it come second? Because the monoplacophora were not segmented, but maybe they were. Okay. So there were 3 potential schemes here. And so I chose the one I thought made the best sense, and I explained why I thought made the best sense. And I've since looked up today what they've done, and of course it's completely wildly different because we not only do we have the DNA, but as I said, we've been running things through MRI machines so we can see inside. It's really cool.
But yeah,
but it doesn't change the fact that the monoplacophora are really ancient. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
And it is pretty cool. Like, something that is surprising that it's held up as long as it has, and still holds up with, any kind of CT scan analysis as by their sutures.
Mm-hmm.
You can get, like, the more derived groups have these incredibly interdigitated sutures between the different, like, sections of the shell. Yeah, cephalopods are cool.
Yeah, they are. Oh, I love cephalopods.
Biesenmeyers loves them.
Yeah. But the point that they often miss, and as I said, I spent a lot of time in the 19th century. Scientists going back to then didn't say this is absolutely the way it is. Now you might find a popular publication that might do that. It's something written for the public because they don't details with the public. They aren't going to get it. But the scientists always would say, this is what we think and this is why. So the scientists that thought that crocodilians and lizards belong together said, this is what we think and why. When I was studying the various different evolutionary potential phylogeny, which is also the evolutionary scheme at the same time, that's what it's built on. For mollusks, papers I was reading, all these books I was going through, all said, this is what we think and why.
Right.
Nobody ever said this is absolute fact. Nobody ever said this is the truth.
Hypotheses.
Biggest straw man that creationists build, I think, is that scientists say that this is so. They don't.
Exactly. It's what the evidence supports.
Right,
Yeah,
exactly.
right.
And as we get better, and I've watched it in my life, it's been a lot of fun. Even as like I'm 5 years old, somebody asked me what I want to be. I want to be a paleontologist. Didn't work out that way, but I've always loved dinosaurs and things like that. And watching all these changes happen, watching them discover the feathered dinosaurs and get all excited about it. And then the arguments about, are these really feathers or are they not feathers? And then finding more fossils and going, yeah, they're feathers. How cool is that? And it's just really exciting. And for people to buy all of that because of their own particular, and might I say, peculiar interpretation of the Bible, because it's not the
Right.
traditional one by any wild stretch of the imagination. It comes from the 19th century again, comes from the Millerites through the Seventh-day Adventists. That's where we get young Earth creationism. They will deny it, but that's where it comes from. But this is just because I think Nestle knows. I know Alex doesn't know me, but I'm a Roman Catholic. I'm a Christian. Oh, of course, G-Man and all those people don't think I'm a Roman Catholic.
You're not a true Christian.
But yeah, I'm not.
I was raised
Christian.
Roman Catholic.
But I was raised I went to Catholic school and we were taught evolution. There was never
the Catholic
any.
Church hasn't had too much of a problem with it.
Those dirty heathens.
No, right, I know. But then we were taught that a lot of the Old Testament is it's apocryphal. It's stories. It's I've equated a lot of the things in the Old Testament, like for instance, the whole thing with the bears that supposedly killed all the children. That for teaching stories like The Boy Who Cried Wolf.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. Right.
It's
It's a story with a moral.
Right. They're not meant to be taken literally. And just like with the flood, there's no way the entire earth could have flooded. I was taught in Catholic school that it was a local flood. Probably the Tigris-Euphrates River Valley flooded. And this is what it was built on. It has a real background. It's not literally true. We know that there were never that many Jews in Egypt.
Right.
My personal belief is that there were some Jews held in subjugation, not even in Egypt, but in the Sinai Peninsula, which was under Egyptian authority. The story gets built up, just like the story of, you hear the story, somebody goes out fishing, and they catch this really nice, they get this big 15-inch fish. It's a beautiful fish. Over time, that thing grows in size to be huge. I had a little cousin once that was so excited because he caught a whale. He came home and he was going, and I started talking to him and I said, well, was it a whale or a shark? You sure? Really, really big. Of course, he was like 7 at the time. And I said, well, what kind of a shark was it? So anyway, by talking to him, I found out he caught like a 15-inch tiger shark. And when I'm talking tiger shark, I'm talking not what we think of as the big tiger shark that swims the oceans. I'm talking about these little striped things that live here off the coast of California. So he was so excited. In his mind, by the time they drove home from the beach, he'd built this up into a whale. Yes, it was a big fish, especially for a little kid. And when stories get told over and over again, they get exaggerated. And that's where we get some of the stories in the Bible. No, there weren't 600,000 Jews. Maybe there were 60. Can't even tell about the numbers because that number is very curious given that they were using base 60 at the time, isn't it?
Yeah.
Just like nobody lived 900 years. They were using base 60 at the time. And as I mentioned this to someone who was also a Christian, and he said the little light bulb went off in his head because he realized that at a certain point in the Bible, the numbers change. And he goes, that makes perfect sense because you have all these exaggerated ages and then you have normal ages.
Well, creations explain that because of some change in the atmosphere, which makes human lifespan shorter for some reason.
Yeah.
No, they were using base freaking 60. That's the difference. Just like brought up the Sumerian kings list, which is a great example. Because if you look at some of the early Sumerian kings, they ruled for like 14,000 years. And then the later Sumerian kings ruled for like 40 years. The Sumerian kings list. And interestingly, it's also kind of a little parallel sort of to phylogenetics in a way. Know exactly how long these people ruled, but we know in what order they ruled. So we got the order down. We don't know.
Just like phylogenetics.
And the researchers that researched the Sumerian kings list have pointed out that it's very difficult to say how long these rulers lived without any other evidence tying them to, like anything from from archaeology, tying them to a particular time. All we could do is we've got just the order. In the future, they'll find something, they'll be able to carbon date it and go, hey, great, we've got a point in time. But they were not only were they using base 60, but they were also using a lunar calendar.
Yes. So
when it
says they ruled for 12.
Yes.
It's just 1 year, for example.
And so not only were they using base 60 in a lunar calendar, but then they had that end of the year problem. And how they answered that, they don't know. And I think didn't the Egyptians add an extra month after so many years or something like that?
I don't know that. No.
Some people did. Some people did because we know that the way we do it was we have leap years and the leap centuries.
Yes.
Ancient peoples dealt with this in different ways. In some cases, they just added an extra month at the end of, when things got too out of hand, they just added some extra time.
Didn't America did America do that one time? They skipped an entire few weeks because they were behind the European calendar or something like that.
I don't know, but I do know there was that problem with the switch, and that's another thing. The switch between the Georgian and the
Gregorian, I think.
Gregorian, thank you. The Gregorian,
Yes.
the Gregorian, the calendars, especially since a certain time period in history, you have to know where you were to know what date it was. Every country did not change at the same time. Kind of an interesting statement to tell people. At the time of the change from the Julian to the Gregorian calendar, you're in to know what date it was. Because they didn't all switch over at once. So, when you throw all those things in there, the researchers who study this basically say, we don't know. We can make guesses, but we don't know. But nobody wrote for 14,000 years.
No. But I want to go back a bit when you said about the old traditional taxonomy about kingdom, phylum, like that. I tend to ignore that because for the fact, for example, when the Greeks say a phylum appeared in the Cambrian, well, terms like phylum only work in a modern day context. Like phylum is a very huge group with many different, very diverse group of animals or plants or whatever. But during the Cambrian, like a phylum chordates, our phylum where we belong to, during the Cambrian they weren't as diverse as they are now. Like if we go back into the Cambrian and we see the chordates, we would probably more say they were a family instead of a phylum, because they were not very diverse. So that's why I reject using or tend not to use terms like phylum, because it's not very significant when you are dealing with like very distant past and timescales.
I agree. It has a certain usage in a modern context. You're right.
Yes,
it
exactly.
becomes absolutely useless in the past. And the other thing too is we know that most Precambrian animals were soft-bodied, so they aren't going to leave fossils. But there's been a lot of research just in, I think, the last 3 years into Precambrian fossils. Some really strong suggestions.
Absolutely. I think
go ahead. You probably know more about that than I did.
We went over a bit of that. Yes, the acorn.
Yeah, just kind of. You can see some early cnidarians, mollusks, potentially echinoderms, potentially some arthropods. Yeah, the record goes back.
Yeah.
I remember. But I thought.
Yes.
I remembered we were talking about Cope and Marsh, and I have Vans.
Yes.
That I had made for my birthday with Cope and Marsh on the surface.
How cool is that?
They're great. They're my favorite shoes. I try not to wear them so they don't get dirty. But I used to work at the Peabody at Yale, so my right foot's my favorite. So I had Marsh on my right foot, and then Cope gets to go on the left. I thought you might like those.
That's great. I love those. But this is I love talking about this stuff, and I love learning about this stuff. So anytime you guys want to have a hangout, and I'm not a professional. I mean, I had an education when I was younger. I was unable to complete it for health reasons. And so to a certain extent, I'm self-educated.
Right. And you are far more educated than most.
Yeah. And I do a lot of reading, and I also watch videos on, college lectures and things like that. But I also, tell people that it's best to have a structured education, because if you are self-educating, you're going to miss stuff. You go to school. But I did have a grounding in that, which helps me. And I'm also aware that there might be gaps. Of course, might be gaps in my education, even if I did have a more formal education. But the thing to do is to go, and this is something I do, go look at a university, go look at several of them. That's what I've done. And you go look at their curriculum. And you go look at what classes they think are necessary for a degree in an area you want to study. And then you go online and you find those classes. You can go to, used to be able to go to Berkeley, but Berkeley has moved all their classes, mostly because they decided they didn't want, like their biology classes from 2013 online anymore, because things have changed since 2013.
Right.
But you can go to MIT, you can go to Yale, you can go to Harvard, you can go to the University of California at Irvine has almost, I think, even its graduate chemistry courses online. Do this yourself. You can go to iTunes U, you can go to EDX and all these other places that have the lectures online. And in some cases, you know, you can take the classes and get feedback. In other cases, you can go online and you can find a what's the word I'm thinking of? I hate it when that happens. You know, a group where they discuss these subjects. You can just go there and you can ask questions. People love it. I've yet to meet the scientist or the science enthusiast who doesn't like it when you ask them questions. If anything, you just better be prepared for a lot of answer. Be hearing a lot more than you actually asked about, which to me is super cool. You know?
One question, 1 hour answer.
Yeah, and that's fine. You know, I could ask a question about, you know, like the arthropod jaw.
And after every answer, it says, so we do need to do more research.
I've screwed up some dates like that.
Yeah.
People will be like, "Hey, you like dinosaurs? Take me here." I'm like, "All right, I'll moderate my answers, but
I know.
it's
I know.
gonna
Oh, and
spoil
one thing.
the illusion."
Yeah, I know. But see, I love that kind of thing. I love it when people know stuff that I don't know, and they can tell me all about it. Because when someone is really enthusiastic and they love what they're talking about, exciting to listen to them and listen to their enthusiasm and to be able to pick up some knowledge from them. That's so cool. Before we go, I just wanted to say one thing too, that because it's an evil thing I like to do. We get a lot of these younger creationists and they're talking about dinosaurs. I like to ask them what dinosaur group Dimetrodon belongs in.
Oh, that's actually that would have been a good question.
Yeah. A very tricky question.
I know. It's well, it's about as bad as asking what a Leistrosaur, because it ends in "saur." What kind of dinosaur is a Leistrosaur?
You mean it's a mammal? What do you mean it's a mammal? How could it be a mammaliform?
Oh,
Well, not a synapsid. There we go.
Yes.
Yes, yeah. But yeah, Dimetrodon, most of them, you know, if you say Leistrosaur, they don't know what you're talking about. They'd have to look it up, even though it ends up in "saur." So you think, oh,
Yeah.
saur must be a dinosaur, right? But most of them have seen a Dimetrodon.
But it's also very weird because saur means lizard, right, in Greek. But the actual lizard group are not called saur. They are called squamate.
No.
They are called squamate.
Yes,
yeah.
exactly.
Right. Well, Lepidosaur is still a group of lizard. Yeah, it's a mess of just old taxonomy.
It's a remnant of the old uses of the Greek words.
Right. But as I said, most of them have know what a Dimetrodon looks like. So I do love asking that one, just to see if they have a clue.
Right. Have you asked
that's an evil thing to do. Fun but evil.
Have you asked the intellectual black hole that is Nephilim that question?
No, I haven't had a chance to. I've had many conversations with him, but I never got to that one. You usually get bogged down in language and
basics.
In that, you know, in Steve's hangout, I talked about that hangout that and I kept presenting Nephi with evidence of how a mutation would create a new structure, and he kept denying that there was a structure. That's not a new structure. That's built on old things. Yes,
exactly.
Everything is built on something that came before. You freaking idiot. But here's the funny part. Another hangout, and I was listening to it. I wasn't in, I was listening to it, in which he described what he thought a new structure was.
And it was exactly.
And it was what we were giving him.
That's frustrating.
And he's
frustrating. Yeah.
It just he will change the narrative so that he can be right. He's not worth talking to, except for the entertainment value. That's it. You're not going to get anywhere with him.
No.
Because he doesn't know what he's talking about. He will change the narrative. I think, Alex, do you know about the?
Yeah. One thing before I forget, during the hangout in the beginning with G-Man and Nephilim, when nobody could join, I asked him in the live chat, on what criteria do you base whether two different organisms are the same kind or not? And he couldn't answer the question. I expected that he did not answer wouldn't answer the question, but still he didn't answer. So yeah, it's very predictable.
Right.
Well, people are still asking him. I don't know if Alex is familiar with Nephi and his whole translocation of animals.
Because what?
What?
You familiar with that?
Translocation of animals?
The translocation of animals?
Yeah, translocation in animals. Well, what he did, this is a classic, and I'm the one who caught him on it, by the way. I caught him, and then Fiona caught him. He did this whole hangout with a paper behind him about translocation in animals. And he's talking about translocation in the cell, right?
Right.
The paper he's using is about transporting animals from one place to another.
No way.
By what?
Yeah.
By planes or by boats or something of what?
By truck, basically. Basically, what it was talking about is when you relocate animals to try to like try to save their species, try to.
What was he thinking the paper was about?
What he did was he apparently Googled it. He saw the title. He put it up behind him, and the whole time he's talking, he's got that paper up. You can see it right behind him.
What was he thinking it was about?
Translocation in cells, I think, something like that. But
translocation in cells,
genetic material. That it's talking about literally carting animals around on the planet.
Oh my God.
I don't think I can show my face again after that.
Fiona
before I forget, I also wanted to another weird thing about the old taxonomy is if you found the ancestors of like the chordates, in what phylum do they belong to?
Yeah,
because the old taxonomy demands that everything has its own phylum, but if the ancestors belonged of chordates belonged in a phylum, then they changed from one phylum to another, which is impossible. It's very weird. But that's what.
And our evidence seems to suggest that the ancestors of chordates are hemichordates, which are again their own goddamn phylum.
Yeah, it's right. The old taxonomy gets very weird when you're talking like transitionals, and it only applies in modern day when you only include like modern animals and not the extinct ones.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, even with modern animals, it gets very complicated as we start
like reptiles.
Well, but not only that, you had the killing pirates can't offer fucking good sport, but within that, you had something like the infra, the ultra, the hemi, you ended up with all these little different divisions. You're just starting with like a subphylum, and then you've got the infraphylum or something like that. They're infra family or
superorder and something like
Yeah, it just gets absurd because you discover something else and you got to make another division for it. Although division
it's a bit ironic because Linnaeus he devised the taxonomic system to basically eliminate all the unnecessary rhetoric about the for example the tomato was named by 7 words in Latin, but he just say, oh no, that's too complicated, let's just use 2 words. But then his taxonomy basically ends up also too complicated like that. Like exactly, it's unnecessarily complicated by all these different words.
But for its time, it was brilliant.
Yes.
And Linnaeus put humans with apes.
Exactly.
He didn't want to. He didn't like the idea of putting humans with apes. Yeah. But when he studied them, he said I had to. There was no choice.
And that's basically a question I could have asked when G-Man said, "Oh, do you have a question that proves evolution?" Oh, I have one. If humans did not came from apes, then why are humans still apes?
Yeah. Oh, and one thing about Linnaean taxonomy too is that he did put sloths in with primates.
Oh yeah.
So if you stop and think about the time, I doubt that Linnaeus ever saw a sloth.
Right.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
fair.
He probably thought it was some kind of South American monkey.
Maybe a gibbon or something.
Yeah. Well, early bestiaries are fun to look at because they have some very strange animals in them. There are some early bestiaries, for example, that show the North American opossum, whatever you want to call it, with the tail over its back and all the babies hanging from the tail.
That's great. I love that.
And there's a lot of stuff like that because some of these bestiaries, especially the medieval ones and even the later ones, descriptions from people who saw them. And the people who saw them may not have the best memories, may have been a bit shocked by what they saw, or or even went by something that somebody else told them. So you've got third or fourth hand by the time you've got the artist drawing the Virginia opossum. And that, if you look up the Virginia opossum, that's a hilarious picture. Very little to do with the Virginia opossum.
How it's called? I can perhaps pull up the picture.
Yeah, and
How it's called?
the old
How is it called?
opossum, OPOSSUM. And it would be
what bestiary? What opossum?
Well, I would just put in opossum and bestiary and see what comes up. I don't remember which bestiary or bestiaries it's in. It's like the story of crap, Marco Polo. And you have creationists trying to say that he saw a dinosaur. And yet, if you look at the description, it actually looks like what he saw was a big mugger crocodile.
It's got all that dragging its body, like belly around description.
It's a really pretty good description given the time of a mugger crocodile, and it has big scary things. You'd never seen anything like it.
So sometimes I see like the on Discovery Channel, like the adventurers going out and handle a crocodile with their bare hands and say, "Oh, look at this! It's like a dinosaur, like an ancient dinosaur." Like, no, it's not a dinosaur. You fucking moron.
You know what I'm waiting for them to do? I'm waiting for them to come out and handle it and go, "Look at this! It's like a bird."
Yeah. If only.
But like those examples, they really annoy me when they say, "Oh, I saw once when they handled a snapping turtle and say, oh, look at this, it's like a dinosaur." No, yeah. But one time they did it right when they dissected a cassowary and say, "Wow, this is like a dinosaur," and yes, it is a dinosaur.
Yeah,
exactly. Oh. Finally, they got it correct. Finally.
I'm going to ask a friend of mine to see if she can get me a video of something. I used to raise turkeys. I love turkeys, which is why turkey cat. They're actually very intelligent creatures. I raised rare heritage turkeys. The kind we raise for meat, the big broad-breasted turkeys, are not terribly bright. They're sweet temperaments, but not terribly bright. We bred the brains out of them. Turkeys are...
Perhaps they did the same to Nephi.
Yeah, maybe that's what happened. But they're actually very smart. They're very personable. They follow you around, and they're very vocal. They're really cool, really affectionate. They sit on your lap and they kind of purr, and they're just really interesting.
They purr?
Yeah, they sort of purr. They have a vocalization.
I think they kind of gobble,
like they have a wide range of vocalizations beyond that, but they have a little sort of chuckling thing in their throat, and you sit on their lap and you're scritching the back of their head, and they're loving every minute of it. It kind of reminds me of a cat's purr, not literally a purr, of course, but but anyway, so as I said, they're very personable creatures. But if you want to see a velociraptor, you want to see some real velociraptor action.
Yeah, cassowaries.
Go take a bunch of grapes out to some turkeys. And stand back. We had I used to belong to the Rare Heritage Turkey group, and there was this woman who had turkeys for the first time, and she said, "Well, I've got some grapes. I'm going to give them to my turkeys. Well, I like I'm hoping they'll like them." And in the chat, in the group a little bit later, she said, "I barely survived."
I at the same moment when I saw like a swan with tiny little ugly ducklings, And I went closer to it because I was very interested, and I was like a tiny kid. And the mother or the father, I don't know, turned around and basically hissed at me like, and like the expression of back the fuck off, like. I basically, okay, I go in the other direction right now, right immediately.
Right. Yeah.
I've been
But
chased
like
by
I
a
said, you
goose.
want to. Oh yeah. So I had geese.
It's very reptilian when they hiss like that.
Oh.
Yes.
Would you? Do you know what my geese did? 'Cause somebody mentioned something about a bird eating a mouse or something. So, I can't remember. I think it was on Facebook. It was on Facebook. My geese once. I had very sandy soil, to be clear. My geese once dug down into a gopher den and ate the babies.
Jesus.
Oh, your geese? So sounds very weird. I have my geese. But
Yeah, my geese.
are I like pets? Are I like pets?
Well, I used to have a lot of poultry,
Mm.
and the geese dug down into the. They'll happily eat a mouse or something. I was outside one day and I saw this. I saw a scrub jay, which is a blue jay, but they're colors there. Anyway, so scrub jay landed on the ground, and it literally looked right and left. It was like right and left, and then it poked its nose and its beak into some shrubbery, and it came up with a mouse,
Mm.
and it flew off with the mouse.
There's a
And I just sort of I laughed at that because I knew crows ate mice and rats and gophers and things like that if they were small enough, and moles. I've seen a crow eat a mole, and of course larger raptors, eagles and hawks and things like that will eat them. I'd never seen a scrub jay eat a mouse until then.
there's a terrifying video somewhere on YouTube of a pelican eating a pigeon.
Wow.
Oh, I saw that. Yes.
It is long and very strange.
Yes. Yeah.
And you see like the outlining going down
Oh yeah.
the neck.
It takes a minute. Like the pigeon fights it the whole time.
Reminds me of the scene with Finding Nemo. When they almost go down the neck.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a very bad way to go.
Oh my goodness.
Very bad way to go.
Yeah.
And imagine if like these giant pterosaurs still were alive. that could be our fate if they were still alive.
Mm-hmm.
You want to say something? I think we are going to wrap this up soon. Do you want to say?
Yeah, I think so too.
Do you want to say something as a final word, perhaps?
Who gets the final word?
Or now everyone gets an ending. Alex, do you want to say something?
I would say that today I learned about a very interesting
Owl that has no wings, legs, and has a nice long neck and a very small head. And Nephilim was right. That's quite the owl. That's all I got.
It's a beautiful owl. I have. I would like to say, read your journals and pay attention to what they say.
Absolutely.
All right. Yes.
All right.
And I want to thank you two for being here and make this hangout very entertaining. It's one of.
Oh,
I don't do this very often, but I've really enjoyed it, and I'm going to end the hangout right now because it's like 5 a.m. right here. I really need to go to bed right now.
Yeah, get to sleep, dude.
Oh.
Yeah.
Night, everyone.
No.
This was fun.
Okay.
Good night.
Good night. Yeah. Good morning. Whatever.
Yeah, whatever time it is. Bye.
Bye.
I know.